On the morning of September 11, 2009, the Lake Highlands apartment in Dallas felt unnaturally quiet as Ashley Oliver Vera unlocked the door and stepped inside. Days of unanswered calls and texts had already left her uneasy, but the silence inside the apartment deepened that fear. She called out for Shelley Nance, expecting a familiar response, yet nothing came back. Walking down the hallway, Ashley noticed Shelley's bedroom door slightly open, an unsettling detail she couldn't ignore. She pushed it wider and froze. Shelley Nance lay face down on her bed, motionless, blood soaking into the sheets beneath her. Panic took over as Ashley backed away, her hands shaking while she dialed 911. Within minutes, responders rushed to the Dallas apartment, confirming the Shelley Nance murder. There were no signs of forced entry, no obvious struggle outside the bedroom. A normal morning became the start of a true crime story. Shelley Nance was born and raised in the small town of Italy, Texas, where everyone seemed to know one another. From early childhood, she showed a natural artistic talent, often filling sketchbooks with detailed drawings inspired by everyday life. Her family recognized her gift quickly and supported her dreams, encouraging creativity inside a close, tight-knit community that proudly celebrated her achievements. Shelley regularly entered school art contests and participated in local exhibitions, gaining confidence with each recognition she received. Friends described her as warm, ambitious, and endlessly uplifting, someone whose positive energy made others feel seen and encouraged. Art was not her only passion. She loved music, enjoyed traveling when possible, and constantly searched for inspiration in people, places, and moments around her. Shelley dreamed of becoming a professional artist and believed her creativity could shape a meaningful future. In the Shelley Nance case, her life would later be remembered not only for tragedy, but for promise. The young artist murdered in this Texas college murder was a tragic young woman whose future was just beginning. Those who knew her believed her dedication, kindness, and imagination would carry her far beyond Texas, leaving a lasting creative mark on the world. After graduating high school, Shelley Nance was accepted into the Art Institute of Dallas, a milestone that marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Leaving Italy, Texas behind, she transitioned from a quiet small town to a fast-paced city filled with opportunity. The change was challenging, but Shelley embraced it with optimism and determination. At the Institute, she focused on both computer design and traditional art, eager to master modern tools while honoring classic techniques. Her professors quickly noticed her creativity, often praising her dedication, originality, and willingness to push artistic boundaries. Shelley developed a distinctive style that blended hand-drawn elements with digital methods, setting her work apart from her peers. Outside the classroom, she explored the Dallas art scene, visiting galleries, studying local exhibitions, and drawing inspiration from the city's culture. Each experience reinforced her belief that she was on the right path. As a college student murdered far too soon, her journey would later become part of the Art Institute of Dallas murder story. At the time, Shelley was simply a hopeful art student, convinced her future was bright and her dreams were finally within reach as she planned exhibitions, careers, growth, success, independence confidently. Shelley Nance shared her Dallas apartment with Ashley Oliver Vera, a fellow student who quickly became one of her closest friends. Living together during the pressures of college life created a strong bond built on trust, encouragement, and mutual support. Ashley often described Shelley as caring and dependable, someone who was always ready to listen or offer reassurance during stressful moments. Alongside this friendship, Shelley was in a relationship with Nathan Shuck, another student at the Art Institute. The two shared artistic ambitions and spent long hours talking about creative ideas, future careers, and shared goals. To friends and classmates, the relationship appeared healthy and stable, grounded in common interests and mutual respect. They were frequently seen together at school events and working on projects side by side. However, beneath this calm surface, subtle tensions began to draw quiet attention. Some people noticed unease surrounding Nathan's roommate, Daniel William, whose behavior toward Shelley seemed increasingly uncomfortable. While nothing appeared openly hostile, there were moments of visible jealousy and awkward interactions that stood out. In hindsight, these early signs would later gain chilling significance in a true crime narration involving boyfriend-roommate jealousy and a devastating roommate-killed-roommate case that shattered what once seemed like an ordinary call. Edge life. Daniel William was Nathan Shuck's roommate, a figure who initially blended into the background of Shelley Nance's life. At first, Daniel appeared quiet and reserved, someone who kept to himself and rarely drew attention. He spoke little in group settings and often seemed socially withdrawn, which caused few people to question his presence. Over time, however, his behavior began to change in subtle but unsettling ways. Friends noticed that Daniel watched Shelley from a distance, lingering in shared spaces longer than necessary and paying close attention to her interactions with Nathan. His comments, once harmless, slowly became passive-aggressive, often dismissive of Shelley or critical in tone. Shelley herself began to feel uneasy around him, sensing a tension she couldn't fully explain. She mentioned to close friends that Daniel's presence made her uncomfortable, though she tried to downplay her concerns to avoid conflict. As weeks passed, jealousy started to surface more clearly. Daniel's fixation appeared less about Shelley herself and more about her relationship with Nathan, creating a dangerous emotional imbalance. What seemed like awkward behavior was, in reality, the early warning signs of an obsessed roommate murder driven by jealous obsession and violent obsession psychology that would soon escalate beyond anyone's expectations. The crime scene inside Shelley Nance's bedroom revealed a level of violence that was shocking in its intensity yet disturbing in its order. Shelley had been stabbed 42 times, with the majority of wounds concentrated on her neck and back, indicating a sudden and furious attack. Despite the brutality, there were no signs of a struggle elsewhere in the apartment. Furniture remained undisturbed, doors and windows intact, and nothing suggested forced entry. Investigators found no evidence of theft, and there were no indications of sexual assault. Shelley's personal belongings were left untouched, reinforcing the belief that this was a personal motive murder rather than a random crime. The bed where she was found appeared to be the sole focus of the attack, suggesting she was caught off guard and overwhelmed quickly. This brutal stabbing murder carried the hallmarks of rage directed at one person alone. In the 42 stab wounds case, the absence of chaos outside the bedroom became as telling as the violence itself. The no forced entry murder pointed investigators towards someone Shelley trusted, someone who knew her routine and felt close enough to cross her threshold without resistance and intent, was deeply personal and deliberate. Detectives from the Dallas Police Department began a real murder investigation immediately, carefully securing the apartment and documenting every detail. Inside Shelley Nance's bedroom, investigators discovered a small bloody footprint near the doorway, evidence that did not match Shelley's shoe size. The bloody footprint evidence suggested the killer had moved quickly and left traces behind. During a search of the apartment, officers also found a torn Ziploc bag containing Shelley's blood and strands of her hair, a disturbing discovery that pointed toward deliberate handling after the attack. This Ziploc bag evidence raised urgent questions about intent and cleanup. Neighbors were interviewed, and one reported seeing a suspicious man lingering near the apartment complex the night before, dressed in dark clothing. While the description was vague, it reinforced concerns that the killer was familiar with the area. As the forensic evidence murder findings mounted, detectives shifted their focus inward toward Shelley's inner circle. Nathan Shuck was questioned extensively due to his close relationship with Shelley. As interviews continued, attention quietly began settling on Daniel William, whose behavior and proximity to the victim made investigators increasingly uneasy. His name surfaced repeatedly as inconsistencies, and uneasy reactions slowly became harder to ignore entirely. As investigators continued piecing together the timeline, Surveillance footage became a turning point in the premeditated murder case. Walmart surveillance footage from the night of September 10, 2009, showed Daniel William inside the store purchasing gloves, cleaning supplies, and multiple Ziploc bags. The receipt was timestamped only hours before Shelley Nance was believed to have been killed, placing Daniel in a critical window of time. This Walmart surveillance murder evidence suggested preparation rather than impulse. Additional footage later showed Daniel entering Shelley's apartment building late that same night carrying a small bag. In the early morning hours, he was captured leaving the building again, this time without the bag, a detail investigators found deeply troubling. When police searched Daniel's room, they uncovered obsessive journal evidence that exposed his mindset. The pages were filled with entries focused on Shelley, her relationship with Nathan, and Daniel's growing resentment. One recurring theme stood out clearly. Shelley was described as an obstacle, someone who stood between Daniel and what he believed should be his. In one entry, he wrote that "she's in the way," a chilling statement that reflected emotional fixation rather than frustration. The incriminating diary murder writings revealed escalating anger and a belief that removing Shelley would solve his internal conflict. Combined with the purchases, the movements caught on camera, and the disturbing journal entries, investigators began to see a clear picture forming. What once appeared to be awkward jealousy now looked like calculated obsession, supported by deliberate actions taken before and after the murder, pointing directly toward planning rather than coincidence. Forensic testing began to close the net around Daniel William as results returned from multiple sources. Blood DNA evidence was detected on his shoes, matching Shelley Nance and contradicting his claims of never entering her bedroom. Investigators used luminol evidence to examine the footwear and surrounding items, revealing clean stains that were invisible to the naked eye. Additional blood traces were later discovered inside Daniel's car, placing him in direct contact with the victim after the attack. Phone records added another critical layer, showing his device pinging near Shelley's apartment during the estimated time of death. When confronted with these findings, Daniel's alibi began to collapse. His earlier statements no longer aligned with digital data, surveillance timing, or forensic results. Each explanation introduced new inconsistencies rather than clarity. Detectives now viewed the case as a trusted killer crime, one driven not by opportunity but by fixation. The evidence painted a clear narrative of a jealousy-driven homicide, supported by science rather than speculation. With physical proof, location data, and behavioral patterns aligning, investigators believed the case against Daniel had reached a decisive point, leaving little room for doubt about who was responsible for Shelley's murder, and justice finally felt inevitable. On November 15, 2009, Daniel William was formally arrested after investigators concluded their case. He was charged with first-degree murder, a decision rooted in the volume of forensic and circumstantial evidence presented. The case moved into the courtroom, drawing attention as a disturbing murder trial documentary in real time. During testimony, Nathan Schuck described Daniel's behavior in the months leading up to Shelley's death, explaining how jealousy, possessiveness, and fixation had steadily intensified. Prosecutors highlighted surveillance footage, forensic findings, and the journal entries to establish intent and planning. The defense argued that the case relied too heavily on circumstantial connections, claiming there was no direct witness to the killing itself. Despite these arguments, the accumulation of evidence told a consistent story. After deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict, finding Daniel guilty. The first-degree murder conviction confirmed that the killing was deliberate and premeditated. In sentencing, the judge emphasized the brutality of the attack and the calculated nature of Daniel's actions. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom true crime proceedings brought a measure of justice, though no verdict could restore the life that was taken or erase the damage caused. In the aftermath of Shelley Nance's murder, Her family faced an unending grief that reshaped their lives. Determined that her death would not be meaningless, they became advocates for awareness around violence and obsession, speaking openly about the dangers of ignored warning signs. The Shelly Nance Memorial Scholarship was created to support young artists, allowing her passion for creativity to live on through others. Art shows and exhibitions were held in her honor, celebrating the talent and imagination she never had the chance to fully share with the world. In every brushstroke and tribute, Shelley was remembered not for how she died, but for how brightly she lived. This crime aftermath documentary leaves behind a quiet warning. Obsession kills, often silently, fueled by hidden jealousy crime that grows unnoticed. Justice for Shelley Nance came through the courts, but her story remains a haunting reminder of how fragile trust can be, and how devastating unchecked fixation can become.
Octavia and Oscar's love story started like a dream. They first met as college students at Creekside College. Octavia studied art, while Oscar was focused on business studies. The first time Oscar saw Octavia near the lake on campus, he was deeply drawn to her. Oscar, who was tall and charming with a friendly smile, tried hard to win her heart. His confidence and goals impressed Octavia. They got married soon after finishing college. Both had big hopes for their future in their hometown. Octavia got a job as an art teacher at a local high school. Her love for art and her way of encouraging young students made her very popular with both students and teachers. Oscar used his family's contacts to get a good position at a well-known investment company. He rose quickly in the business world. Over time, Octavia and Oscar became important members of the Creekside community. They often attended social events and town meetings. Their house in Oakwood Estates, bought with Oscar's earnings, showed how successful they had become. Octavia's love for art could be seen in every part of the house. She painted walls with her own designs and placed handmade sculptures in their yard. To others, they looked like the perfect couple. Octavia's artistic side matched well with Oscar's business skills. Her kindness softened Oscar's sometimes tough nature. Friends would often talk about how they still looked at each other with the same love they had during their college years. But not everything was as perfect as it seemed. Octavia and Oscar had been trying to have a baby for many years, without success. The medical treatments and broken hopes started to affect their marriage. Oscar started spending more time at work, staying late at the office. Octavia turned to her art and her students for peace. During this difficult period, Octavia began spending more time with her mother, Cordelia Prescott. Cordelia was a widow who lived just outside of town. In her younger years, she had traveled around the world as a photojournalist. She only moved to Creekside after falling in love with Octavia's father. After he passed away, she chose a quiet life. She spent her days taking care of her garden and helping animals at a local shelter. As Octavia visited her mother more often, Oscar started going with her. What began as small talk during family meals slowly changed into something deeper. This was the beginning of a betrayal that would break their family apart. One cool autumn night, Octavia was busy preparing for an upcoming art show. Oscar felt ignored and unhappy with the growing space between him and Octavia. That evening, he went alone to Cordelia's cottage, saying he wanted to check on her. Cordelia was surprised but happy to see him. She offered him a glass of her homemade wine. They sat in her small, cozy living room filled with souvenirs from her travels. Oscar started to share his problems at home. Cordelia listened carefully. Her eyes, which looked a lot like Octavia's, showed deep understanding. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the quiet setting. Or maybe it was just the need for someone to listen. But that night, something changed. A touch lasted longer than usual. A look carried more meaning than it should have. When Oscar left Cordelia's house that night, both of them knew they had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. In the days that followed, Oscar and Cordelia began finding reasons to meet again. Cordelia would ask for help around the house. Oscar, who had never liked gardening before, suddenly became interested. Their secret meetings happened more often, always planned carefully so no one would notice. One of the first times they met after that night, Oscar came to help fix a broken faucet in Cordelia's kitchen. As they worked side by side in the small bathroom, the silence between them felt heavy. Their hands touched by accident, and it felt like a sudden spark passed through both of them. When Cordelia reached across Oscar to grab a towel, he noticed her perfume, a strong mix of jasmine and vanilla. The smell made him feel dizzy. Their eyes met in the mirror, and for a few seconds, neither of them looked away. On a warm Sunday afternoon, Cordelia was teaching Oscar how to trim the rose bushes. She stood very close behind him, guiding his hands. They both noticed how close they were. Her breath touched his neck, and her body was gently pressed against his back. It sent a chill down Oscar's spine. When he turned to ask a question, their faces were only inches apart. Time seemed to pause as they stood there, frozen in a moment filled with forbidden desire. At a family gathering, they found a moment to be alone. They slipped away to the garden behind the house. Hidden behind a wall of climbing roses, they gave in to their feelings. Their kisses were filled with urgency. Their hands moved quickly, like they were afraid the moment would end. When they heard Octavia's voice calling, they quickly separated. They fixed their clothes and hair. They felt guilty, but the danger made everything feel more exciting. Their secret relationship took over their lives. They stopped thinking about what could happen if someone found out. In Cordelia's bedroom, a place that had once been quiet and private, they created a world just for themselves. The sounds of soft whispers and creaking bed springs filled the room as they lost themselves in their affair. It was not just about physical closeness anymore. Their feelings for each other grew stronger and more serious. What began as simple attraction turned into something deeper and more risky. They started imagining a life together, without thinking about the damage it could cause to others. Their talks were filled with excuses. Oscar said he felt ignored and not understood by Octavia. Cordelia said she had been lonely since her husband had passed away. They told each other their relationship was something rare, something that went beyond normal rules. As their affair grew, so did their lies. Oscar began to invent business trips and late-night meetings. Cordelia pretended to be sick to avoid family events. They created a hidden email account and used throwaway phones to talk, always making sure no one could find out. But each lie made the guilt grow stronger. Oscar found it harder to look Octavia in the eye. Cordelia began acting nervous and distant around her daughter. The same relationship that once gave Octavia comfort now became poisoned by betrayal. Neither Oscar nor Cordelia realized how much their actions would hurt the family. As they kept meeting in secret, they did not notice that Octavia was beginning to feel something was wrong. The first sign came on a rainy Tuesday. Octavia decided to surprise Oscar with lunch at his office. But when she arrived, his confused secretary said he had left early to meet a client. Octavia pretended it was a mistake, but the thought stayed in her mind. In the weeks that followed, Octavia began noticing small changes. Oscar seemed far away, often lost in thought during their talks. His phone buzzed at strange times, and he would leave the room to take calls quietly. When she asked him about it, Oscar gave short answers and blamed work pressure. Octavia's sharp artistic senses, which usually brought beauty to her life, now made her notice tiny details. She smelled a perfume she did not use on Oscar's clothes. She saw a lipstick mark on a coffee mug he brought from work. Sometimes, Oscar would avoid touching her. All these things started to build a clear picture in her mind. She did not want to believe what she was starting to feel. Even her relationship with her mother began to change. Cordelia, who used to be eager to spend time with her daughter, now seemed distracted and distant. Their regular tea visits became rare. Cordelia often canceled at the last minute, giving excuses about other plans. When they did meet, Octavia noticed something was wrong. Her mother seemed nervous and avoided eye contact, something she had never done before. As Octavia's suspicions grew, she found herself trapped in a painful loop of doubt and self-blame. She questioned every moment, every word spoken by Oscar and Cordelia. Was she only imagining things? Could the stress from their struggles to have a child, along with the pressure of her upcoming art show, be making her see things that were not real? But Octavia needed to know the truth. Quietly, she began looking for signs. She checked Oscar's credit card records and found charges at restaurants and hotels that he had never mentioned. She drove past her mother's house at strange times, hoping her fears were wrong. But one evening, when Oscar had claimed to be working late, she saw his car parked not far from Cordelia's home. That moment felt like being hit in the chest. Every new discovery hurt more than the last. The trust she had built her life on began to crumble. Her students and coworkers noticed that something was off. She had dark circles under her eyes. Her hands shook while she painted. Her smile no longer felt real. Each day, she seemed more like a ghost of who she once was, caught between the urge to face the truth and the desperate hope that she was wrong. But the truth was coming, and it would hurt more than she ever expected. The day everything fell apart started like any normal Saturday. Octavia had spent the morning at school, finishing the final touches for the student art show. Oscar had left early, saying he had a golf game with some clients. On her way home, Octavia decided to stop by her mother's house. She thought maybe a cup of tea and a talk would help ease her nerves. But as she turned onto the quiet road near Cordelia's house, her heart dropped. Parked outside was Oscar's black car. Octavia sat in her car, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. She tried to convince herself there could be a good reason for this. But deep down, she already knew. Her legs shaking, she walked toward the house. The curtains were closed, but through a small opening, she saw shadows moving inside. She took a deep breath and quietly unlocked the door with her spare key. The scene in front of her would never leave her memory. There, on the couch covered in a floral pattern, Oscar and Cordelia were locked in a close embrace. They looked completely lost in each other, not aware of anything else. Cordelia's hair was messy. Oscar's shirt was unbuttoned. On the table were 2 glasses of wine, half full and untouched since their moment of betrayal began. Time seemed to stop. Then, both of them looked up at once, as if they had felt her presence. Their faces showed shock, guilt, and something close to defiance. What followed happened quickly. Emotions spilled everywhere. Accusations were shouted. Octavia's voice broke the silence. Her cry was filled with pain. Oscar jumped up, trying to explain, his words stumbling. Cordelia stayed seated, her face pale, tears falling silently. Octavia's questions came fast, her voice shaking with pain and rage. The answers they gave cut deep. 6 months. It had started as friendship, they said. Then it turned into something more. They said they had not planned for this to happen. But the damage had already been done. They said they were sorry. But Octavia could no longer stay in the same room with them. Her heart was broken. She rushed out of the cottage and drove without a destination, the image of their betrayal playing again and again in her mind. By the time she returned home, the sun had already gone down. Shadows stretched across the yard of the house she had once loved. She sat alone in the dark living room, surrounded by everything that used to bring her comfort. The pain, the lies, the betrayal, it all came crashing down. In that moment, something inside her changed. She felt cold. She felt strong. Someone had destroyed her world, and someone would have to face the consequences. Octavia knew exactly who. The moments before the shooting happened over several tense hours. That summer evening, Octavia spent the day drifting between sadness and rage. She walked through the house like she was trapped inside it. The ticking of the hallway clock sounded louder than usual, each second passing slowly, reminding her that everything she once believed was now gone. As the sky darkened, Oscar returned. He walked in carefully, no longer confident. Octavia stayed hidden in the shadows of the dining room and watched him remove his jacket and loosen his tie. It was a normal action, but now it felt cold and empty. His routine meant nothing anymore. Oscar called her name, his voice shaking. When she stepped into the light, he stopped. The woman in front of him did not look like the wife he once knew. Octavia's eyes were red and hollow. Her face showed pain, and her body was stiff with anger she could hardly hold back. Oscar began to talk quickly. He apologized again and again. He said he had felt ignored. He said work and their struggles to have a child had pushed him to a breaking point. He called the affair a mistake. He begged her to believe him. But the more he spoke, the more the anger inside her grew. She did not respond. Instead, she turned and walked toward his study. She remembered the gun he kept in the drawer, a gun he had bought after a few break-ins in the neighborhood. Without thinking, she opened the drawer and took it out. The metal was cold in her hand. She walked back to the living room, her heart pounding. Oscar saw the gun and froze. His face turned pale. He lifted his hands and slowly backed away, speaking fast, promising to fix everything, begging for another chance. But Octavia could not hear him anymore. All she could see were the images in her head, Oscar and her own mother together. The betrayal kept flashing in her mind like a nightmare she could not escape. Then, in a moment filled with fear and chaos, Oscar moved toward her. Maybe he wanted to take the gun away. Maybe he thought he could stop her. But it was too late. Her hand tightened. The gun fired. The sound filled the room, loud and final. A picture frame fell from the wall and shattered on the floor. Then there was silence. Oscar looked shocked. He put his hand on his chest. Blood spread across his white shirt. He took a few steps back and then collapsed. He gasped for air, eyes wide, staring up at Octavia. Everything hit her at once. She dropped the gun. It hit the floor with a loud noise. She ran to him, her anger now gone. Horror and regret filled her heart. She tried to stop the bleeding, pressing her hands against his wound. His breath was short, and his skin turned pale. With shaking hands, Octavia grabbed her phone and called 911. Her voice trembled as she gave the address. She begged them to hurry. While waiting, she held Oscar's head in her lap. She cried, saying sorry again and again, whispering for him to stay alive. The minutes felt endless. Outside, neighbors had heard the gunshot and were gathering. Through the window, Octavia saw their faces. At first, they looked worried. Then their expressions turned to shock. As the neighbors began to understand what had happened, Octavia heard quiet voices from outside. Someone yelled about calling the police. Soon, the sound of sirens filled the air. Paramedics rushed inside and moved quickly to help Oscar. Octavia, frozen in place, watched as they placed him on a stretcher and took him to the ambulance. When the ambulance pulled away, the house fell into silence. Octavia stood alone, surrounded by the remains of what she had done. The police arrived soon after. Detective Mia Davis led the investigation. She looked carefully at every detail while officers marked the area and began collecting evidence. Detective Davis approached Octavia, who sat still on the couch stained with blood. In a calm but serious voice, she explained Octavia's legal rights and asked if she understood what had taken place. Octavia, her voice weak and shaky, told the story, how she found out about the affair, how the argument began, and how the gun went off. While speaking, she seemed distant, as if she were telling a story that belonged to someone else. As police officers let her out in handcuffs, the truth of what had happened began to hit her. From the corner of her eye, she saw her neighbors peeking from behind their windows. Their faces showed a mix of fear, pity, and curiosity. At the hospital, Oscar was fighting for his life. The bullet had missed his heart by only a few inches and was dangerously close to his spine. Doctors rushed him into surgery. Family, friends, and co-workers gathered in the waiting room, whispering with disbelief. Cordelia Prescott, filled with guilt, tried to visit Oscar, but his family turned her away. She went back to her cottage, where she locked herself in and refused to speak to anyone. She looked much older, the energy she once had now replaced with deep sadness. Detective Davis continued her investigation. She spoke with friends, co-workers, and family members, slowly putting together what had led to the shooting. The deeper she looked, the more complicated the case became. It was no longer a simple story. It was a story full of hidden pain and broken trust. In Creekside, people began to take sides. Some said Octavia had suffered too much and had reached her breaking point. Others believed that, no matter what happened, violence was never the answer. The town was divided. Then something important came to light. Octavia's best friend Zara, who also worked as an art teacher, stepped forward with a series of text messages. In them, Octavia had shared her growing fears about Oscar's affair. The messages showed her pain and confusion. They helped explain her mental state before the shooting. The courtroom was full when the trial began. The judge called the room to order. Every seat was taken, and people waited in silence. The district attorney, Vincent Harding, stood up first. He spoke with force and confidence. He said that Octavia had planned the shooting. He described her as a woman full of revenge who wanted to punish both her husband and mother. Octavia's lawyer, a skilled and respected attorney, gave the jury another point of view. He said Octavia had always been a kind and caring person. She had helped her students and served her community. He explained that she had been pushed to the edge by a betrayal too painful to bear. He spoke about the emotional weight she had carried in silence. In the final moments of the trial, both sides made powerful statements. Harding reminded the jury of how serious the crime was. He said that justice had to be served. While Morales asked the jury to think carefully about Octavia's life and the unusual events that led to the shooting, a deep silence filled the courtroom. The jury left to begin their decision-making. Octavia Fairweather's future, and the end to a painful chapter in Creekside, was now in their hands. After 3 long days of discussion, the jury returned. The room was still as the judge read the verdict. Octavia Fairweather was found guilty of aggravated assault, a lesser charge than the attempted murder that the prosecution had wanted. Gasps and whispers echoed around the room. Octavia stood quietly beside her lawyer. She showed no emotion, but her face was calm. The judge, recognizing her clean record and the emotional pressure she had been under, gave her a sentence of 5 years in prison. She would be allowed to ask for release after 3 years. She was also ordered to attend psychological counseling and complete an anger management course. The public reacted in different ways. Some thought the punishment was too light for such a serious act. Others believed it was fair, given everything Octavia had been through. As she was taken out of the courtroom, the full weight of what had happened seemed to fall on her. She knew the path ahead would be long and difficult. Oscar recovered from his injuries, but the experience left deep emotional scars. He moved to a new state to rebuild his life. During Octavia's time in prison, they divorced. They stayed in touch only through formal letters and a few phone calls. Though their bond was broken, some small form of forgiveness began to grow, a quiet understanding of the pain they had both caused and suffered. Cordelia withdrew from the world completely. She stayed alone in her small cottage, seeing no one except for a home nurse who visited now and then. The guilt she carried had changed her, both in body and in spirit. As the town of Creekside slowly began to heal, the story of Octavia, Oscar, and Cordelia stayed in the minds of its people. It served as a painful reminder of how quickly life can fall apart, how easily trust can be broken, and how deep the damage can go when betrayal enters a family. The story asked everyone to look closely at their own lives, to care for the people who trust them, to think before making choices that cannot be undone, and to understand how deeply one decision can affect many lives. In March 2012, the body of a 34-year-old man named Daniel Crawford was found in the honeymoon suite of the Azure Cove Resort in Cackle. His throat had been cut, and the room showed clear signs that a violent fight had taken place. His wife, Sophia Crawford, who was 30 years old, was missing. When the police started to look into the case, they found a very disturbing story filled with cheating, obsession, and betrayal. The events that led to Daniel's death started 6 months earlier, in September 2011. That was when Sophia met Miguel Alvarez, a local diving teacher, during a work trip to Carasa. What began as a secret relationship slowly turned into something much more dangerous. Miguel became obsessed, and that obsession turned a happy honeymoon into a nightmare full of blood and fear. The early morning air in Carasa was heavy and warm, filled with the smell of the sea. The Azure Cove Resort had always been known as a peaceful place where couples and travelers came to relax and escape their problems. But on March 6, 2012, that peace was broken. At 6:45 in the morning, a woman who worked in housekeeping unlocked the door to room number 306. She had been working at the resort for nearly 10 years. That morning, she thought the guests had gone out early for sightseeing and came to clean the room. The Crawfords had checked in just 1 day before. They seemed like any other couple on their honeymoon. But the room she walked into was nothing like what she had expected. The bed was messy, with the sheets twisted and hanging off the sides. The white bed covers were stained with dark marks. Some stains looked like someone had tried to clean them but gave up halfway. The air had a strong metallic smell that did not match the fresh ocean breeze coming from the open balcony door. Then she saw the body. Daniel Crawford was lying on the floor near the end of the bed. His body was still. A deep cut went across his neck from one side to the other. Blood had spread under his head and into the carpet. His hands were stiff. One was in a half-closed fist, and the other was stretched out, like he had tried to reach for someone or something. The housekeeper dropped the clean towels she had been carrying. Her breath stopped in her chest, and she could not move for a moment. It was the kind of horrible scene she had only seen in movies. It did not belong in a honeymoon suite at a nice resort. Her hands were shaking as she tried to grab the phone in the room. When she called the front desk, her voice cracked. She could hardly speak. Her whole body was shaking, and she felt like she might fall. Help arrived very fast. Security came to the room within minutes. When the first police officers from the Karasa Police Department got there, they blocked off the entire hallway. The hotel guests, many still sleepy, were told to leave their rooms and stay where they were. A few curious guests peeked out from their doors. They whispered to each other, confused about what was going on. But no one could have imagined the horror that had happened inside that room. By 8 in the morning, the crime scene was under control. The police worked fast. Their serious presence looked strange against the calm beauty of the resort. The forensic team stepped over the towels left on the floor, moving carefully around the carpet soaked in blood. Cameras flashed as they took pictures. Small evidence signs were placed near a broken champagne bottle. The sharp pieces of glass sparkled under the lights. It was not clear if the bottle had been used as a weapon or if it broke during the fight. The open balcony doors led to a private terrace with a view of the sea. There was sand on the floor, showing that someone had walked in and out without shoes. There were no signs of forced entry. The lock was still working. The door had been opened from the inside. Then came the first big discovery. Sophia Crawford was missing. She was 30 years old. Her suitcase was still in the room. It was half open, with clothes spilling out. Her wedding dress, the same one she had worn just hours before, was on the floor near the dresser, wrinkled and forgotten. Her phone was gone. Her flip-flops were missing too. So was a hotel key card. But most importantly, Sophia was gone. The hotel's security team helped the police check the video recordings. The officers worked with focus, watching the early morning footage carefully. They moved back and forth through the video, looking for anything strange. It did not take long to find what they needed. At 2:30 in the morning, Sophia appeared on camera. She was walking unsteadily down the hallway, going from her room toward the beach area. She was barefoot. Her dress was loose. She looked like she was in a daze. Everything about her movements seemed strange. She was not alone. A few steps behind her was Miguel Alvarez. He was 36 years old. He had no shirt on. His skin was tan, his body strong. He looked calm. Even though the camera quality was poor, the way they acted showed a close connection. At one moment, Sophia turned around and looked at him. Her face was hard to understand. Then they disappeared from the camera view. They walked into the dark path that led to the private beach. By the time the police arrived at Miguel's villa near the cliffs, the sun was already higher in the sky. The sound of the waves crashing on the rocks was loud, but the silence between the officers was louder as they knocked on the door. Miguel opened the door casually, like he had been waiting for them. His hair was wet, like he had just taken a shower. He looked calm. Too calm. His voice was steady. He spoke slowly, choosing each word carefully. He said that Sophia had come to him by herself. He said they spent the night together at his villa, and that she left just before sunrise. He made everything sound normal and simple. But his body told a different story. There were deep scratch marks on his chest and arms. They were red and fresh. Some of them looked painful, like someone had scratched him in fear or anger. The police saw them right away. When they asked about the scratches, Miguel waited before he answered. He moved his feet, shifting his weight. Then he said the scratches were from a diving accident the day before. But the delay in his answer had already made the officers suspicious. They wrote down everything. The way he spoke. The way he acted. The way his story did not fully make sense. The way Miguel spoke about Sofia in the present tense felt strange. No one had seen her since she walked away with him. On March 8th, the police brought Miguel in for more questions. They looked at the scratches on his body again. The forensic team collected samples from his bed, his bathroom sink, and his trash can. They were looking for anything that could prove Daniel Crawford had been inside that villa. Miguel sat in the interrogation room for hours. His confidence started to fade as the questions became more serious. He kept repeating himself. His story kept changing. He could not keep the details the same. The detectives pushed harder. Where did he go after Sofia left? Why did she go to him that night? Why did the cameras never show her coming back to the resort? Miguel had no real answers. By March 20th, the final clue was found. A shirt with blood on it was discovered in Miguel's laundry. It was hidden under a pile of clothes that smelled like the ocean and sweat. The blood matched Daniel Crawford's DNA. Miguel had no strong explanation. He said he got into a fight earlier in the night before Sofia even arrived. But the security cameras did not show any fight. His neighbors had not heard any noise. And then there was the video footage from 4:15 in the morning. The resort cameras showed Miguel walking back to his villa alone. His face was hard to read. His hands were shaking as he opened his door. He had no cuts or bruises on his face. He did not look like someone who had been in a fight. But his shirt was missing. The police did not need anything else. Miguel Alvarez was arrested. The news spread fast. People on the island were shocked. A honeymoon had turned into a murder case. And the man who used to guide tourists and show them the beauty of Cackle was now accused of a terrible crime. But one question remained. Where was Sofia Crawford? She had disappeared into the night, leaving behind a hotel room full of blood and many unanswered questions. As the sun went down on March 20th, Miguel was in jail. Daniel was in the morgue. And the people on the island all said the same thing. This was never just an affair. This was something much worse. In a tall office building in New York, at the law firm of Harrison and Beckman LLP, Daniel Crawford was well known and respected. He was 34 years old. He worked as a corporate lawyer. He moved with the confidence of someone who had spent years learning how to stay in control. His clients trusted him. His coworkers looked up to him. His wife, Sofia, loved him, at least, she did at first. They had met 5 years earlier in a bookstore. Sofia was wearing her camera around her neck and flipping through a travel magazine. Daniel, with his serious and organized life, was the complete opposite. He liked plans. She liked adventure. That difference made their connection exciting at the start. It felt like two puzzle pieces that should not fit but somehow did. But marriage has a way of showing the cracks. By October 2011, when they had their big wedding, those cracks were already starting to show. Sofia worked as a freelance travel photographer. She was always flying somewhere. One month she was in Thailand, taking pictures of lantern festivals. The next month she was in Italy, taking photos of wide, beautiful vineyards. Daniel, on the other hand, worked long nights. He was often too tired to talk the way they used to. The space between them grew larger. It was not just about distance. It had become something more harmful. Then came Chloe Bennett. She was 27 and worked as a paralegal at his law firm. Chloe was smart and driven. She knew how to succeed in Daniel's world. Unlike Sofia, Chloe was always nearby. There were no missed calls. No canceled flights. No schedules that never matched. At first, it seemed innocent. Long hours at the office turned into drinks after work. Drinks turned into secret meetings at hotels. Daniel told himself it was not serious. He told himself he still loved Sofia. But deep down, he knew the truth. He wanted the excitement. But Sofia had secrets too. In November 2011, just 1 month after the wedding, she met Miguel Alvarez. He was 36 years old. She had traveled to Cackle for work. Her job was to take photos of sea animals for a magazine article. Miguel had been Sophia's diving instructor. His tanned skin and rough voice made her forget that she was married. What started as a simple chat near the ocean turned into dinner at sunset, and then a long night at Miguel's villa near the beach. For Sophia, it was just a break. A night where she did not have to be the wife of a man who always seemed too busy. For Miguel, it was something completely different. He fell in love with her right away. After she left, he called her many times, sent messages late at night, and gave her gifts she never asked for. It should have made her feel afraid, but she enjoyed the attention. She told herself she was in control. She believed she could keep the affair from becoming something serious. By February 2012, Miguel started asking Sophia to leave Daniel. He told her they could start a new life together. He said she did not have to be someone's second choice. Sophia laughed and brushed off his words like they were a silly dream. She did not know that Miguel truly believed it. By March 2012, the Crawfords were on a honeymoon they both knew was fake. The Azure Cove Resort in Carassa looked perfect with white sand and private villas by the sea. But Sophia felt trapped. She barely touched Daniel. At dinner, they hardly spoke. She kept checking her phone, reading old messages from Miguel and deleting the new ones before Daniel could see them. Daniel noticed. He did not say anything. He was not the kind of man to ask questions directly. Instead, he watched her. From across their room. From across the dinner table. From the side of his eye as they walked along the beach. He saw how her fingers paused over her phone. He saw that her mind was far away. By 11:30 that night, Daniel was sitting alone at the resort's bar by the beach. He only planned to have one drink, but he kept drinking more. That was when he met Elena Ruiz. She was 25 and worked as a bartender at the resort. She was young, playful, and kind. Her accent was soft. Her smile came easily. She poured another drink, leaned closer when she spoke, and looked at him in a way Sophia had not done in months. It did not take long before Daniel placed his hands on Elena's waist and led her to a quiet corner of the bar. He did not care who saw. He did not care if Sophia saw. But she did. At 11:45, Sophia stood at the bar entrance and saw her husband holding another woman. Something broke inside her. Her heart pounded. Her hands tightened into fists. But she did not say a word. She turned and walked away quickly, heading to the only person who still made her feel something. Miguel. By 12:15, she was standing outside his private villa, out of breath. Miguel had been waiting for this moment for months. He dreamed of it. He imagined it over and over. He believed she would come back. He believed she would pick him instead of Daniel. But when she told him she could not stay, that Daniel was still her husband, and that everything between them was a mistake, Miguel's face changed. They argued. His voice got louder, filled with anger. He reminded her of their nights together. He spoke of promises he thought she had made. He said he waited for her. That he loved her. That he planned a future for both of them. She told him none of it was real. At 1:30 in the morning, Miguel drove her back to the resort. His hands held the steering wheel tight. His knuckles were white. His breathing was heavy. His thoughts were wild. He was not ready to let her go. Not like this. At 1:50, Sophia returned to the honeymoon suite. Her dress was wrinkled. Her skin was still warm from Miguel's touch. Daniel was already inside. He smelled like perfume. His shirt was open. His face showed no emotion. The fight began right away. It was loud and intense. Sophia yelled first. She asked who the woman was. She asked how long it had been. She wanted to know if it was just another meaningless night for him. But Daniel did not stay quiet. He shouted back. Where had she been? Who had she been with? Their voices echoed through the thin resort walls. A glass broke. A chair fell. Someone in the next room heard the noise, but no one wanted to get involved. Then, in the morning there was a knock at the door. Daniel, still angry, opened it without thinking. Miguel was standing there. He was not smiling. He was not the friendly, relaxed man Sophia had met months earlier. His hands were in fists. His breathing was sharp and slow, as if he was trying to stay calm. Everything that happened next was a blur. There was violence. There was blood. Then, there was silence. By 6:45 in the morning, the housekeeper opened the door to the honeymoon suite. She found Daniel's lifeless body. The walls were covered in blood. The bed was still messy. Sophia was gone. The salty air wrapped around Sophia Crawford like a second skin as she slowly woke up. Her body felt heavy. Her mind was confused. Her wrists were hurting. Something rough was cutting into her skin. Her arms were tied behind her back. Her ankles were tied too, just loose enough to let her move them a little. She blinked through the fog in her head. A faint light moved above her. She felt the soft shaking of a boat under her. The air inside the cabin was thick and damp. The wooden floor beneath her was rough. It was 4 in the morning on March 6th. Sophia was no longer on land. Across from her sat Miguel Alvarez. He was 36 years old. His face was calm, but something dark filled his eyes. There was no guilt in the way he looked at her. No fear. No regret. He had killed Daniel Crawford. And now he believed Sophia belonged to him. That thought hit Sophia like a heavy weight. The last thing she remembered before waking up on the boat was a nightmare. Daniel's face twisted in pain. His hands holding his bleeding throat. Blood on the walls. Miguel's fists. Her own scream. Then, nothing. She must have blacked out. Now, she was tied up on a yacht somewhere far off the coast of Curaçao. No one knew where she was. Miguel spoke to her in a soft, gentle voice that made her stomach turn. He talked about their future. About the life he believed they would have. He spoke as if everything that happened was normal. He said Daniel's death was something that had to happen, so they could finally be free. He did not think he had done anything wrong. He did not think there would be any punishment. The boat rocked gently. The sea stretched in every direction. The island was gone from sight. If she screamed, no one would hear her. Miguel kept her on the boat for 2 days. On the morning of March 6th, when the sun rose, she understood how far from reality he had fallen. He made breakfast. He acted like they were just a couple on a trip. He talked about where they would go and who they would become. Sophia did not fight. Not yet. She listened. She pretended. She needed him to trust her. She needed him to believe she would not try to escape. But by the evening, Miguel began to change again. He watched her too closely. He walked around the deck, muttering to himself. He grew upset when she did not say what he wanted to hear. She saw it clearly, he was breaking down. It was only a matter of time before he heard her again. That night, Miguel sat outside drinking rum. Sophia's mind was racing. She had been studying the ropes. Her wrists were tied tightly, but the knot was not perfect. She waited. Watched him. His breathing slowed. His body leaned to the side in the chair. He was getting tired. She moved slowly. Quietly. Her hands had been working on the knot all day. By 5:30 in the morning, her wrists were free. She did not think. She ran. The deck was cold under her feet. The wind hit her skin. She jumped over the side of the yacht and into the dark, icy water below. The cold hit her lungs like a punch. But she did not stop. The ocean pulled at her. The currents were strong, trying to drag her under, but she kicked hard. Her arms pushed against the water. Her breath was tight in her chest. Behind her, Miguel shouted. She heard his feet hit the deck. She heard the sound of something metal being picked up. But she kept swimming. She did not look back. She did not care if he was chasing her. By the time she reached the shore, she could barely stand. Her legs shook. Her chest rose and fell in sharp, heavy breaths. Her body was bruised from the sharp rocks along the coast. The world spun around her. Black spots danced in her eyes. Then everything went dark. She did not know how much time passed before she felt hands on her shoulders. A voice spoke above her, mixing Spanish and papiamento. She could barely open her eyes. A fisherman was crouched next to her. His weathered face was filled with worry. He spoke again, but she could not reply. Her lips were dry. Her throat burned. All she could do was close her eyes as sleep pulled her away. By March 20th, Miguel was in police custody. The authorities had moved quickly. They already suspected him from the beginning. But Sofia's escape and survival confirmed everything. During the final interrogation, Miguel showed no guilt. He spoke just one sentence again and again, his voice calm and steady. "She was supposed to love me." Those words chilled everyone in the room. Sofia had survived. But something deep inside her had broken. When news of Daniel Crawford's murder and Sofia's kidnapping reached the media, it became one of the most talked about stories of the year. The case had everything. A picture-perfect couple hiding secrets. An affair that turned into obsession. A killer who believed that love meant control. People were divided. Some believed Sofia was a victim, a woman tricked and trapped by a man who refused to let her go. Others said she had played with fire. They whispered that her choices led to Daniel's death. By July 2013, Miguel was sentenced to life in prison. He would never be free again. But there was no joy for Sofia. Surviving was not the same as living. She never returned to New York. The city that once felt like home now felt cold and full of ghosts. She moved to Europe. She changed her name. She gave up photography. Even years later, when she closed her eyes, she still saw the blood on the walls of the honeymoon suite. She saw the way Miguel had stared at her. She heard Daniel gasping for air in his final moments. She spent years trying to run away from the past. But it followed her. Carasa, once a place of beauty and peace, had become a memory forever marked by love, lies, and death. In March 2013, paramedics found a 27-year-old woman named Charlotte Monroe lying on the front porch of her house in Oak Ridge, a quiet neighborhood just outside Chicago. Her body was shaking, her breathing was weak, and there were signs of poison in the wine glass next to her. Somehow, she survived. When detectives started looking into the case, they found a dark story behind it. There was a secret love affair, a dangerous obsession, and a best friend who was ready to kill. It all began on February 14, 2013, the night of Charlotte's wedding. One wrong decision that night started a series of events that would almost take her life. It was a freezing cold night in Oak Ridge. The wind was so sharp that it felt like it could cut through even the thickest coats. The streets were empty, and most people had gone to sleep. The homes were quiet, with only a few lights glowing behind the windows. Nothing ever disturbed the peace in that area. But at 11:52 p.m., everything changed. A neighbor, an older man who had just finished watching the late-night news, stepped outside to take out his trash like he did every night. This time, something caught his eye. He saw a shape on the porch across the street. It looked like someone was lying there. There was something dark and thick on the steps. At first, he thought someone might have spilled a drink, maybe knocked over a glass. As he moved closer, he saw fingers twitching. The person was trying to move. He noticed the pale skin and the shallow, sharp breaths. When he saw the face, he knew it was Charlotte Monroe. She was the newly married woman who had just moved into the neighborhood. People used to hear her laugh around the block. Now, she looked like she was in pain. Her lips were shaking, and foam was coming out of her mouth. She was dying. The man did not wait. He ran back inside his house, hands shaking while he tried to call for help. His voice was shaking when he spoke to the emergency operator. He had no idea what had happened, but he knew it was serious. When the paramedics arrived, they moved quickly. One of them knelt beside Charlotte and checked her pulse. It was weak. Another paramedic gently turned her to the side so she would not choke on the foam. Her arms and legs were jerking. Her body was trying to fight something inside it. Next to her was a wine glass. It had tipped over, and its liquid had spilled on the wooden floor. Right away, the paramedics knew something was wrong. The way her body was reacting did not look like an accident. It also did not look like an allergic reaction. It looked like poison. They did not wait. They placed Charlotte on a stretcher. Her body was soft and still now. Her movements were slowing down. As they rolled her away, one of the paramedics looked back at the house. The front door was wide open and moving slightly in the wind. The house inside was dark and silent. Something felt wrong. The ambulance rushed to St. Agnes Hospital. The sirens echoed through the quiet night. Even while the ambulance rushed to the hospital, Charlotte's heartbeat kept getting weaker. For a few moments, it seemed like she was slipping away. But Charlotte Monroe was stronger than anyone had thought. The hospital was quiet when detectives Noah Landry and Olivia Hayes arrived at 6 in the morning. The overnight staff spoke in soft voices. The only sounds came from the machines, gently beeping in the stillness. Charlotte was in room number 412 at the end of the hallway. It was a small, cold hospital room, and there, the woman people now called a miracle was slowly recovering. The doctors had done everything they could. The poison, whatever it was, had nearly shut down all her organs. But somehow, she survived. Detective Landry stood just outside the room, flipping through his notebook. He was reviewing the little information they had. There were no signs of forced entry. There was no sign of a fight. Just a woman, poisoned and alone on her porch. He disliked cases like this, when nothing added up. Detective Hayes, younger and sharper, stood at the small glass window on the door, watching Charlotte. Charlotte looked weak, far too weak for someone who had just survived an attack like this. Her chest moved slowly, and her fingers twitched beneath the blanket. The doctors had told them she might not wake up for another day. Her body had been pushed too far. But Charlotte did wake up. It started slowly. Her eyelashes moved. Then, she took a deep breath. Landry entered the room just as her eyes opened. For a second, she stayed still. Then her face changed. She remembered. Her eyes filled with fear. Landry had been in this job long enough to know what terror looked like. Charlotte opened her mouth to speak. Her breathing was unsteady, and her throat was sore, but she forced herself to talk. Her voice was shaky, but her words were clear. She said one name. Sophia. By 2:30 in the afternoon the next day, Sophia Caldwell was in handcuffs. She had been at her apartment downtown when police arrived. She did not scream. She did not fight back. She only watched them with a cold, unreadable expression. Inside her apartment, officers moved quickly. One of them saw an open laptop. The search history made everyone in the room stop. How much poison to kill a person? Best poisons that cannot be found in tests. How fast does poison work? Then, there was a text message. It was from Daniel Monroe, Charlotte's husband. It was short. A warning. If you keep this baby, I will tell her everything. Now, everything made sense. Charlotte had been poisoned by someone she had trusted. Someone she had known for many years. Her best friend. And now, that best friend was being taken to jail. Her hands were tied behind her back. She said nothing as reporters shouted questions. She stayed silent as the cameras flashed. Her face appeared on every news channel in the city. Sophia Caldwell had tried to kill her best friend. And now, she would have to face the consequences. February 14, 2013, had started as a day of celebration. It was a day filled with love and promises. Vows were spoken beneath the soft colors of a winter sunset. The wedding had looked perfect. Too perfect. It was the kind of beauty that seemed fake, like something painted to hide the truth. Charlotte Monroe had smiled brightly that day. Her eyes were full of hope as she walked down the aisle toward the man she thought would be her future. Daniel Monroe, standing at the front in a clean black suit, looked perfect too. He looked like a man in love. His hands were steady. His voice strong, as he promised to spend his life with her. But deep inside Daniel, hidden behind his calm and steady appearance, there was something darker: guilt. It was heavy and crushing, always with him, like a shadow that never went away. Among the guests that day, standing quietly in the crowd of familiar faces, was Sophia Caldwell. She had been Charlotte's best friend since childhood. She had seen every important moment in Charlotte's life: the heartbreaks, the achievements, the late-night talks about dreams and love. She was the one who wiped Charlotte's tears when past relationships had ended. But that night, while Charlotte danced in her husband's arms, Sophia's smile was not real. She was only pretending to be happy. Her smile was a mask, one that felt like it would fall apart at any moment. Just a few hours before Charlotte walked down the aisle, Sophia had been in a hotel room with Daniel Monroe. It had not been planned. It had not been something either of them expected. But it had happened. One night. One mistake. While Charlotte had been in the next room getting ready with her bridesmaids, laughing and sipping champagne, the two people she trusted most had crossed a line that could never be erased. Daniel had been drinking. So had Sophia. The wedding was getting closer, and the pressure was heavy. Daniel had stepped outside to breathe, to find some space. That was when he saw Sophia. Her presence was familiar. Her voice was calm. She had asked if he was feeling nervous. He had not planned to kiss her. He had not planned for anything to happen. But once it started, neither of them stopped it. For Daniel, it was a moment of weakness. But for Sophia, it was something much deeper. She had always loved Daniel, not just as Charlotte's fiancé, but in a secret, hidden way that she had kept buried for years. She had been jealous of Charlotte, though she never admitted it, not even to herself. Charlotte always had the love stories, the happy endings. Sophia was always the friend standing nearby, smiling quietly from the side. But that night, Daniel had been hers. Even if it was only for a few hours. By morning, Daniel was full of regret. But regret could not change what had happened. As the sun came up, they both agreed never to talk about it again. Never to tell Charlotte. Never to let that one night ruin what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. So Daniel stood at the altar, looking into Charlotte's eyes, promising her a lifetime. And Sophia stood among the bridesmaids, clapping, smiling, pretending. By March 2nd, 2013, at 10 o'clock at night, everything had changed. Sophia had been feeling sick for weeks. She felt tired, weak, and uneasy. A small voice inside her kept asking questions she tried to ignore. But then, the test confirmed it. She was pregnant. She sat on the cold bathroom floor in her apartment, staring at the test. Her heart pounded inside her chest. There was only one possible reason. One moment that had caused this. Daniel. That truth cut her deeply. She knew, even before speaking to him, that this was not a secret he could keep hidden. That night, she went to the Monroe house without being invited. Her hands shook as she knocked on the door. When Daniel opened it and saw her face, all the color left his skin. He already knew. The talk that followed was quiet and tense. It felt dangerous. He did not want to hear the words. He wished it would all disappear. But Sophia made herself clear, she was not going to end the pregnancy. Daniel felt trapped. The world he had with Charlotte was falling apart. He sat down, his head in his hands, knowing the truth. If Sophia had the baby, there was no way to hide what they had done. And when Charlotte found out, it would ruin everything. That moment broke Sophia completely. She had believed Daniel would choose her. She thought he would fight for her, say that their night together meant something. She thought he would call it fate. But instead, he told her clearly. Charlotte was his future, not her. And something inside Sophia shattered. By March 4th, 2013, Sophia had made her decision. She sat alone in her apartment that night, her thoughts growing darker. The love she once felt for Daniel had turned into anger and pain. Her heart was filled with jealousy and hate. Charlotte had always won. Always. Even now, after everything, Daniel still chose her. Sophia could not let it happen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she began typing. What poison leaves no trace. Fastest-acting liquid poison. How long does poison take to kill someone? She scrolled through page after page, learning about substances that had no color, no taste, and could shut down the human body before doctors even knew what was wrong. Charlotte was in the way. If Charlotte disappeared, Daniel would have no choice but to turn to her. For the next few days, Sophia made her plan. She prepared everything, waited for the right moment, for the chance to make sure Charlotte Monroe would never be in her life again. The night of March 6, 2013, was calm. At 11 o'clock, the air outside the Monroe house smelled like fresh earth after a late winter rain. The soft glow of the patio lights lit up the wooden deck in the backyard. The neighborhood was quiet. The distant sound of cars on the road barely touched the peaceful space. It was the perfect setting for a simple talk between friends, for a quiet laugh, or a glass of wine. That is what Charlotte believed. For weeks, Charlotte had been feeling uneasy. Something about her marriage felt strange. Daniel's touch had changed. His voice was quieter. His smile was rare. And Sophia, her best friend since they were girls, had started acting differently too. She seemed tense, distant. Her eyes held something that never reached her lips. Charlotte had tried to ignore the feeling. She had wanted one night to feel normal. So, she asked Sophia to come over, just the two of them. Like old times. A girls' night, she called it. Sophia agreed without hesitation. Now they sat together on the patio. 2 glasses of wine. A quiet night. The stars above. For a short moment, it almost felt like before. Charlotte laughed at something, a soft, real laugh that broke through the tension. Sophia smiled too, but something about her smile was off. It was too perfect. Too calm. Her hands did not shake as she lifted the wine glass and handed it to Charlotte. Her voice was gentle. Her tone friendly. Charlotte accepted the glass without a second thought. The first sip was smooth. The second even better. But then, everything changed. The pain started small, a tight feeling in her stomach. At first, it felt like nothing. But it grew quickly. Her throat tightened. The air would not come. A deep burning rose from her stomach to her chest. Charlotte gasped. Her hands grabbed the edge of the table. Her body felt strange, like it was turning against her. And across the table, Sophia just watched. She did not move. She did not speak. She showed no fear, no worry. She waited. Sophia had thought it would happen fast. She expected Charlotte's body to shut down in minutes. But Charlotte was stronger than she had believed. By 11:45, Charlotte had fallen from her chair. Her body shook. Her hands clawed at her throat. The pain was sharp, blinding. Her vision swam, the world spinning around her. Her chest was on fire. Her arms and legs were losing strength. But even as her body gave up, her will refused. With the last bit of strength she had, her hands reached out. They were shaking and covered in sweat as they scraped against the wooden deck, trying to hold on. As she pulled herself forward, she did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not stay where she was. The house behind her felt cold, dark, and empty. But outside, there was light. She crawled slowly. Every movement brought new waves of pain through her body. Her legs barely worked. The pain was blinding, but she kept going. She reached the porch. Her fingers wrapped around the edge of the steps. Her body shook as she tried to lift herself forward. The air outside felt different, cooler, cleaner, but it was still not enough. Her lungs refused to work. Her stomach burned like something was tearing her apart from inside. The darkness was growing stronger. She was fading. The last thing she saw before everything went black was a flash of headlights, the shape of someone running toward her, and a voice calling her name. Then, silence. By the morning of March 9, 2013, everything had changed. The arrest was quick. Sophia Caldwell, once a trusted friend, was taken from her apartment by detectives who had spent 2 days putting the truth together. There was no doubt anymore. The evidence was strong. Charlotte had survived. And in those painful hours at the hospital, she had spoken the name of the person who tried to kill her. The detectives found everything. The online searches, clear and planned out. Questions about poison, how it worked, how fast it could kill. They found text messages between Sophia and Daniel Monroe, full of tension and fear. The wine glass, once part of a peaceful evening, now carried the fingerprints of someone who tried to commit murder. At first, Sophia denied it. She tried to explain it away. She said it was not true. But the truth was clear in her voice, in her shaking hands, and in the way she could not meet their eyes. When she could no longer fight it, her voice broke. She said it was never supposed to happen this way. But it had. And there was no way to change it now. By June 2013, the trial ended. The courtroom was full. Many people there had once trusted Sophia. Some had even called her a friend. The jury took only 4 hours to make their decision. Life in prison. No chance of release. Sophia showed no regret. No apology. She sat still, her face without emotion, as her sentence was read. As for Daniel Monroe, he was given full custody of the child Sophia would never raise. The same child that had started everything. Charlotte had survived. But she was no longer the same person. Her body had healed, but the wounds inside were deeper than anyone could see. She had once trusted too easily. She had loved too deeply. And in the end, she had been betrayed by the two people she had trusted most, her husband and her best friend. She had stepped into marriage believing she had a future full of love. Instead, she had stepped into a nightmare. It had been 1 full year since Charlotte Monroe had fought for her life on that wooden porch. 1 year since she had tasted death in her mouth, while poison rushed through her veins. 1 year since Sophia Caldwell, someone she had once called family, tried to take her life away. March 2014 arrived quietly. The cold winds of winter had turned into soft breezes. Flowers were blooming again. But inside Charlotte's new home, the air still felt heavy. She had moved 6 months earlier, far from Oak Ridge, far from the whispers, far from the stares of neighbors who still looked at her like a ghost. But even in a new city, in a house with no memories, sleep still refused to come. The nightmares stayed. Some nights, she woke up gasping for breath, feeling like poison still burned her throat. Her hands reached for sheets instead of the porch floor. Other nights, she heard voices that were not real. A whisper. A memory. A betrayal she could never forget. She tried to move on. She tried to build a new life. But the past was always there, just under the surface. And then, on a quiet morning, in March 2014, the letter arrived. Charlotte found it in her mailbox, squeezed between useless bills and grocery store flyers. It was a plain white envelope. No return address. No markings. Nothing about it seemed important. At first, she almost threw it away. But something felt wrong. She opened it with calm hands. But when her eyes reached the single line written inside, her breath stopped. I will see you again someday. The letters were clear, perfectly written, in handwriting she knew too well. Charlotte's fingers shook. Her heart pounded in her ears. The room around her became blurry. The air felt heavy. The walls seemed to close in. Sophia was supposed to be in prison, locked away, gone. So how did she send this? 100 thoughts filled Charlotte's mind. Was the letter real? Was it a cruel joke? Was Sophia watching her, even from behind bars? The logical part of her mind understood, prisoners could send letters. People could help. It was not impossible. But something about those words felt too personal. Too exact. The betrayal had never left her. And now, it never would. She dropped the letter. It floated to the floor. The black ink stood out against the white paper like a scar. Some betrayals never fade. Some ghosts never rest. And some stories never truly end. Make sure to like and subscribe so you do not miss any of our daily updates. You can also check out another unbelievable case, the one where a wife discovers her husband's secret family during a regular trip to the grocery store. Watch it now and tell us what you think in the comments. In the quiet neighborhood of Millbrook, just outside the busy city of Hartford, Connecticut, a terrible crime destroyed the peaceful image of suburban life. On a cool morning in September 2018, the body of 17-year-old Sarah Thompson was found in the woods behind her family's house. The shocking discovery left the entire community afraid, with people locking their doors and speaking quietly about the unknown killer who still walked among them. Detective Michael Carter, an experienced officer from the Hartford Police Department, was chosen to lead the investigation. With his strong instincts and deep commitment, Carter began to uncover the lies and secrets surrounding Sarah's death. He did not know that this case would test his beliefs and force him to face the darkest parts of human behavior. At first, people suspected Sarah's stepmother, Amanda Wilson. Their difficult relationship was well known in the neighborhood, and Amanda's jealousy of Sarah seemed like a possible reason for the crime. But under the surface of what looked like a simple case, there was a deeper and more disturbing story filled with betrayal, secrets, and deadly choices. At the center of it all was Robert Wilson, Sarah's stepfather. He was a respected businessman and seen as a strong figure in the community. After the murder, he acted like a heartbroken father, helping his wife through their pain. But Detective Carter soon found that Robert's calm and caring appearance was only a mask. Behind it were many lies that would eventually bring him down. This is the story of a murder that destroyed a family, tested a detective's instincts, and revealed how dangerous hidden desires and betrayal can be. It is a painful reminder that sometimes the most harmful people live among us, pretending to be normal and hiding in our very own neighborhoods. Sarah Thompson was a bright and hopeful young girl whose life ended just weeks before she turned 18. She was born to a single mother, Amanda Thompson, in 2001. Sarah was curious and loved to learn. From a young age, she enjoyed art and literature. Her teachers often praised her for her creative mind and thoughtful writing. Her drawings were displayed in her high school, and she had recently started taking photos, capturing the beauty of the woods behind her home, the same woods where her life would later be taken. Although Sarah did well in school and had strong talents, her life at home was not easy. When she was 12, her mother married Robert Wilson, a successful businessman. At first, Sarah was happy with the new stability, but as she became older, her relationship with Robert began to suffer. Friends described Sarah as kind and brave. She had a small group of close friends and was known for speaking out against bullies at school. Her best friend, Emily Chen, said Sarah dreamed of becoming a journalist and studying at NYU. She wanted to discover hidden truths and report them to the world. Sarah's connection with her mother was complicated. For many years, Sarah had been Amanda's whole world. But after Robert entered their lives, Sarah felt her mother gave more attention to her new husband. This created tension and emotional distance between them. In the months before Sarah's death, their relationship had become more strained. The people close to Sarah began to notice changes in how she acted. She became quiet and spent more time alone, either in her room or walking through the woods with her camera. Her art started to show darker emotions, and her schoolwork, which was usually very neat, began to slip. Her best friend Emily said that Sarah seemed distracted and worried. But when anyone asked what was wrong, Sarah would just smile in a way that did not feel real and quickly change the subject. What no one knew was that Sarah had found a secret, one that would end her life. Because of her curious nature and strong desire to find the truth, Sarah had discovered something dangerous. Someone was ready to kill in order to keep that secret hidden. Sarah Thompson's life, filled with dreams and a bright future, ended just before she turned 18. Her death left the whole community in pain, and the mystery behind it shocked everyone in Millbrook. Robert Wilson was 45 years old when Sarah died. He appeared to be the picture of success in suburban life. He was a confident and respected financial advisor in Hartford. Many wealthy people trusted him with their money. He looked professional and spoke with confidence. He was involved in the community, worked with the Chamber of Commerce, and helped coach the local youth soccer team. Robert grew up in a working-class family in Boston. Through hard work, charm, intelligence, and strong ambition, he built a better life for himself. He met Amanda Thompson at a charity event in 2012. Their quick romance led to marriage just 8 months later. From the outside, he looked like the perfect husband and stepfather, giving Amanda and Sarah a stable and wealthy life. But behind that image of success, Robert had secrets. His marriage with Amanda had become cold, and he started having an affair. For over a year, he was in a secret relationship with Elena Gonzalez, the wife of his neighbor and friend, David. Robert felt alive with Elena. He believed he shared a deep connection with her, something he never had with Amanda. They met in private whenever their partners were away, either working or running errands. Robert became very skilled at lying and hiding his double life. As Sarah grew older, Robert started to feel nervous around her. She was sharp and noticed small details. He was afraid she might find out about his affair. So he began avoiding her, skipping family meals and events. He made excuses and tried not to be alone with her. To most people, Robert seemed friendly and generous. David Gonzalez, who did not know about the affair, called Robert the best neighbor and a true friend. Robert's clients trusted him because of his smooth talk and strong results. But people who worked closely with him noticed changes. His assistant at the office said Robert had become more short-tempered and distracted. His college friend Mark Stevens said he seemed tense, like he was always worried about something. No one could imagine that behind Robert Wilson's clean and successful image was a man ready to do terrible things to protect his lies and keep his life from falling apart. On the morning of September 15, 2018, a jogger made a horrible discovery. While running on his usual path in the woods behind the Wilson home, he saw something under a pile of leaves and branches. It was Sarah Thompson's body. Someone had tried to hide it, but not very well. The sight was disturbing and hard to forget. Detective Michael Carter arrived at the scene within the hour. He looked carefully at everything. Sarah's body showed clear signs of a struggle. She had bruises on her face and arms. Her hands had marks that showed she had tried hard to fight back. The cause of death was clear. Her throat had been cut by a sharp, rough-edged blade. As the forensic team searched the area for clues, Carter paid close attention to all the details around the scene. Sarah's camera, which her friends said she always took with her on walks through the woods, was missing. Marks in the dirt and disturbed plants showed that her body had likely been moved after the attack. It seemed someone had tried to hide her quickly, but not carefully. One important detail stood out: there were no signs of sexual assault. This made Detective Carter believe the motive was personal, not random. The violence of the attack suggested that the killer acted out of strong emotion, possibly someone close to Sarah who had lost control in a moment of anger. When the news of Sarah's death spread, the peaceful neighborhood of Millbrook changed. People who once left their doors unlocked began to check their locks twice. Parents kept their children inside. The woods, once a quiet place to relax, were now surrounded by yellow police tape and filled with fear. Detective Michael Carter, who had worked with the Hartford Police Department for 20 years, took charge of the case. Known for being careful with details and for seeing things others missed, Carter had solved some of the city's most difficult cases. As he stood in the Wilson family's living room and looked at the pictures on the wall, he knew this case would be one of the hardest he had ever faced. The first 2 days of the investigation were busy. Carter and his team interviewed family members, friends, and neighbors. They went through Sarah's school records, studied her social media, and carefully traced her steps during the days before her death. Robert Wilson looked shocked and gave a detailed story of where he was on the night of the murder. He said he had worked late at his office. Security footage and his assistant confirmed this. Amanda Wilson, still clearly heartbroken, had trouble staying calm during her interview. She said she had argued with Sarah the day before, but said it was just a normal disagreement between a mother and daughter. As Carter looked deeper into their lives, a more troubling picture appeared. Neighbors said there were often loud arguments between Sarah and Amanda. Their voices could sometimes be heard across the quiet neighborhood. Sarah's best friend, Emily Chen, said that Sarah had felt unhappy at home and believed no one truly understood her. The first round of forensic tests brought up more confusion than answers. Small bits of evidence on Sarah's clothes did not match anything from Robert or Amanda. The murder weapon, likely a hunting knife or something similar, had not been found, even after a careful search of the Wilson house and nearby areas. Then came a breakthrough. When Carter spoke with Elena Gonzalez, the Wilsons' neighbor, she seemed nervous. She said she had seen Sarah arguing with Amanda in the driveway the day before she went missing. Elena also said that Amanda often seemed jealous of Sarah's youth and beauty. This, along with the tense home life and Amanda's weak explanation for where she was that night, made Carter focus more on Sarah's mother. He began to think that long-standing anger might have exploded into a deadly fight. As the second week of the investigation began, Carter felt like he was close to solving the case. He got permission to search Amanda's personal items and messages, hoping to find the key piece of evidence. But a quiet doubt stayed in Carter's thoughts. Something about Robert's calm attitude and his perfect story felt too clean, too easy. Carter's instincts were warning him. He did not yet realize that the truth behind Sarah's death was darker than he ever expected. While everything seemed to point toward Amanda Wilson as the main suspect, the real story was far more disturbing. Detective Carter, guided by the evidence, began building a case against Amanda Wilson, the 42-year-old homemaker who had a difficult history. Carter's team found a series of intense text messages between Amanda and Sarah from the weeks before the murder. In one message, Amanda accused Sarah of trying to destroy her marriage. Sarah replied by calling her mother a jealous and pathetic old woman. These messages supported the idea that their relationship had become deeply troubled. More doubt was raised by Amanda's behavior after Sarah's death. Although she seemed heartbroken at first, she soon became defensive and hard to question. Her alibi for the night Sarah died was weak. She said she had been home alone, watching television, but there was no one to confirm it. During a search of the Wilson house, police found a journal hidden in Amanda's nightstand. The entry showed Amanda's growing anger towards Sarah. She often wrote about feeling invisible next to her daughter's beauty and the attention Sarah received from Robert. One disturbing note read, "Sometimes I wish she would just disappear. Life would be better without her always watching and judging." Suspicion grew even more when a neighbor told police that Amanda had come home very early in the morning on the day Sarah's body was found. Amanda could not explain it. She claimed she must have been sleepwalking, a condition she had never mentioned before. As the evidence piled up, Carter felt more pressure from both his superiors and the public. The people of Millbrook were scared. They wanted answers. Amanda Wilson, once seen as a grieving mother, was now viewed with anger and suspicion. Carter believed Amanda might be guilty, but he still felt unsure. Something about the way she acted during questioning, her fear and confusion, did not match what he expected from someone capable of such a violent crime. Still, with the information in front of him, he moved forward with the arrest. 3 weeks after Sarah was found, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Amanda Wilson was taken into custody. As officers led her away in handcuffs, she cried out that she was innocent. Her voice echoed through the silent neighborhood. Robert Wilson stood at the door, watching without emotion as his wife was taken to the police car. Carter did not know it yet, but he had fallen for a clever trick. The real killer was still free, using the arrest to hide what he had done. The case against Amanda seemed strong, but Carter's doubts would not go away. The truth started to come out when Carter noticed something unusual in nearby security footage. Robert's car had left his office parking lot much earlier than he said on the night of the murder. This small detail had been missed before. Carter became suspicious and started to look more closely into Robert's life. He spoke again with Robert's coworkers and clients, focusing on his actions and personal connections. During a talk with Robert's assistant, Carter learned something important. Robert had been making secret trips to a coffee shop far from his office, always during lunch breaks. Carter then placed the coffee shop under surveillance. What he saw confirmed his fears. Robert had been meeting with Elena Gonzalez, the wife of his neighbor and close friend, David. The way Robert and Elena acted showed they were much more than friends. They were having a secret relationship. Carter had now uncovered Robert's hidden affair. With this new truth, he asked Elena for another interview. This time, when shown proof of her relationship with Robert, Elena broke down. She admitted the affair had lasted over a year. They would meet in secret whenever possible. Overcome with guilt, Elena confessed she had lied in her first statement to protect Robert. Her confession changed everything. She confirmed they had met the night of Sarah's murder, directly going against Robert's claim that he was working late. This destroyed the timeline Robert had carefully built. Carter kept digging and found even more secrets. Bank records showed Robert had looked into moving large amounts of money overseas. Emails between Robert and Elena spoke of a future together, away from their current lives and responsibilities. Now, Carter faced a serious question. Could Robert Wilson, the man who appeared to be a grieving stepfather, actually be Sarah's killer? The motive was not fully clear, but Robert's perfect image was falling apart. Carter realized he had been so focused on Amanda that he nearly missed what was happening right in front of him. The turning point came from an unexpected place. Sarah's best friend, Emily Chen, came to Carter holding a small leather diary, Sarah's personal journal. Emily, feeling guilty, admitted she had kept the diary hidden because she did not want to damage her friend's memory. But now, with Amanda being blamed, she felt the truth needed to come out. Carter spent the night reading Sarah's private thoughts. The diary showed a young girl who had slowly discovered a terrible secret. Months before her death, Sarah began to suspect her stepfather was having an affair. She wrote about strange text messages, secret phone calls, and Robert's odd behavior. The most serious entry came just 3 days before she died. In shaky handwriting, Sarah wrote that she had followed Robert one night and saw him holding Elena Gonzalez in a way that made it clear they were more than just neighbors. She felt disgusted and betrayed. She did not know if she should confront him or tell her mother. This gave Carter a clear motive. Sarah had found out about the affair. If she had spoken out, Robert stood to lose his marriage, his business, and his good name. His entire life was built on the way others saw him. Sarah had the power to destroy it all. With this new understanding, Carter asked for another full examination of Sarah's clothes. This time, the results were different. Experts found fibers on her jacket that matched a rare type of wool used in Robert's expensive suits. Also, Sarah's phone records showed several short calls to Robert's office on the day she disappeared. These might have been her trying to confront him or arrange a meeting. One more discovery sealed the case. Carter found that Robert had bought a hunting knife from a local shop just a week before Sarah died. That knife was now missing from the house. It was the same kind of weapon the killer had used. Now everything made sense. Robert had lied to his family, his friends, and the police. He had cleverly pointed suspicion at Amanda, using her anger and troubled history as cover. Carter felt both impressed by Robert's planning and sickened by how coldly he had acted. Robert had taken the life of his own stepdaughter just to keep his secrets hidden. With all the evidence now pointing at Robert, Carter knew he had to act fast. The man once praised as a leader in the community was now seen for who he really was, a clever and heartless murderer. Carter decided to face Robert directly, but not at home. He would go to Robert's office, far from reporters and watching neighbors. It was time to bring the truth into the light. The Wilson home, once full of tension and secrets, now stood quiet. Meanwhile, Detective Carter and his partner walked into the elegant office of Robert Wilson's financial advisory firm. They found him calmly meeting with a client, appearing as if nothing in his life had changed. He looked like a true professional, calm, polished, and in control. When Carter asked to speak with him privately, Robert did not resist. In a low voice, barely louder than a whisper, Robert began to talk. Slowly at first, then faster, the truth began to spill out. He told Carter about Sarah confronting him in the woods. She had threatened to tell Amanda and Elena's husband about the affair. He described the fear that gripped him in that moment, the fear of losing everything he had built, his career, his reputation, and his life as he knew it. With tears falling down his face, Robert said he had panicked. In that panic, he lashed out. He did not plan to kill Sarah, but when it happened, he chose to make sure she would never speak again. His words were filled with guilt and self-hatred. He explained how he had carefully set everything up to make Amanda look guilty. He knew about the history between her and Sarah and used it to mislead the police. When Carter finally placed him under arrest, Robert did not resist. His only words were soft and broken. "Do not tell Elena. Please, do not let her know what I have done." The man who had once been praised and respected was led out of his office in handcuffs. Everything he had created fell apart in an instant. The truth had come out, and there was no way to hide from it anymore. After a 2-week trial, the jury needed only a few hours to reach a decision. Robert Wilson was found guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder. The judge, speaking firmly, said the violent nature of the crime and Robert's effort to mislead the investigation showed coldness and cruelty. Robert was sentenced to life in prison without any chance of parole. Justice had been served. But for the people who had loved Sarah, the pain would not fade quickly. Amanda had lost her daughter. Emily had lost her best friend. And an entire community had lost its sense of safety. In the end, the case of Robert Wilson became a reminder of how strong the human spirit can be, even in the face of deep loss. It showed the power of never giving up on the truth. And most of all, it proved that Sarah's voice, though silenced, still had the power to reveal everything. In a quiet neighborhood in Maryland in the year 2012, Maria Jenkins was known as a good wife and a loving mother. She gave her full attention to her husband Richard and their 2 children. She worked hard to create a peaceful and caring home for her family. But behind the happy image of their family life, Maria was hiding a painful truth. Her husband was being unfaithful. Maria had known about the other woman for several months. At first, she thought about forgiving him because of their children. But as time passed, it became too difficult. Richard did not feel sorry, and Maria decided it was time to stop pretending. To the outside world, Maria always looked like someone who believed in strong family values. She grew up in a small town where she watched her parents stay together through hard times. Her mother was gentle but strong, and once told Maria that love means staying together even during tough days. These words stayed with Maria, and for many years, she held on to that idea. Even when her own life started to fall apart, she still believed in fighting for her marriage. Maria met Richard in the late 1990s, just after she finished college. He was full of charm, had big goals, and promised her a life filled with love and excitement. For many years, he kept that promise. They bought a house in Maryland, had 2 lovely children, and built a life that Maria truly loved. She stayed home to take care of their children, Sophie and Liam, while Richard worked long hours to support the family. Maria saw herself as the glue that held everything together, making sure their children had a safe and warm place to grow. But slowly, things started to change. By the time it was 2011, Maria began to notice small differences in Richard. He seemed lost and thought more often. Sometimes he came home late, and Maria could smell a light perfume on him that did not belong to her. At first, she tried to push away her doubts. She told herself it was just his job or maybe her own mind playing tricks. Richard had always been a caring father, and even though their marriage had some problems, Maria believed they were strong together. But the warning signs became clearer. Richard spent more time on his phone and kept it close to him all the time, as if he was hiding something. At night, when they went to bed, he would turn away from her and keep reading messages. Their talks had become shallow, without the deep connection they once had. The love and closeness that used to come so easily now felt cold and distant. Maria could feel something was deeply wrong. On January 5, 2012, everything changed for Maria. She was doing her usual house chores, trying to ignore the feeling that something was not right. While sorting through the mail, she saw a credit card bill that was much higher than usual. She felt curious and, even though she was unsure, she decided to look at the details. That was when she saw them, hotel receipts. Her hands shook as she read the charges. These were not from just one night. There were many visits over the past few months, all to the same hotel. It was a place Richard had no reason to visit. Slowly, the truth began to settle in Maria's mind. Still, she did not act right away. She knew she needed more than just a feeling and some hotel charges to speak to him. Over the next few weeks, Maria began watching more closely. She checked his phone when he was asleep, making sure not to leave any sign. What she found confirmed her fear. Richard was seeing someone else. The pain hit her hard. Even then, she said nothing. She chose to collect proof. She took pictures of him leaving the house at strange times. She saved conversations between him and the other woman. She even saw moments where he lied about work and came home early. By February, Maria had everything she needed. But she stayed quiet. She still loved Richard, or maybe she loved the person he used to be. She did not want to break their home. A part of her still hoped he would realize his mistake before it was too late. On February 15th, after many nights without sleep and rising sadness, Maria finally decided to speak to him. The children were asleep, and the house was quiet. The only sound was the heater making a soft noise. Maria's heart beat fast as she walked toward Richard, who was sitting in the living room, unaware of what was coming. She had practiced what to say many times, but when she spoke, the words did not come out smoothly. Richard reacted just as she feared. At first, he denied everything. He said she was imagining it, that he had been working or meeting clients. But when Maria showed him the proof, he could not hide anymore. He broke down. He asked for forgiveness. He blamed stress, work, and life. Maria felt hurt but also saw a small light of hope. Maybe this would wake him up. Maybe now things would change. But they did not get better. In the following weeks, Richard's behavior changed again. He became distant and unfriendly. When Maria tried to talk about it, he blamed her. He said she cared too much about the children and not enough about him. By the third time they argued, Maria knew Richard was not sorry. He was not going to change. Now, he was trying to make her feel guilty. Maria could not sleep. Her mind kept repeating the fights, the lies, and what would happen to their children. Sophie and Liam were everything to her. She did not want their family to fall apart. But every time she looked at Richard, she saw a man full of lies, a man who did not feel bad about what he had done. Then came the final moment. On March 3rd, Maria had gone to the store for groceries. When she came home, Sophie ran to her with a question. The little girl had seen something strange. While Maria was gone, Richard had brought another woman, Lisa, into their home. Sophie, only 6 years old, had seen them sitting close together in the living room, even hugging. Maria's heart broke. Her daughter did not understand what she had seen, but the moment was enough to destroy any hope Maria still had. This was no longer just a mistake. Richard had crossed a line. He had brought his affair into their home and into their children's lives. That night, Maria lay in bed and could not sleep. She knew what she had to do. She would collect every bit of proof she had. When the time was right, she would reveal everything. She was done giving second chances. This was the start of the end for Richard. By early March, Maria knew there was no going back. The betrayal she once tried to forgive had turned into something stronger, a decision to take back her life. For years, she had given everything to build a family, a home, and a future. Now, it was time to protect herself and her children. She once believed her home was a safe place, but Richard, the man she once trusted, had turned that belief into a lie. He had not only hurt her, he had also disrespected the home they built together. Most painful of all, he had brought his betrayal into the lives of their children. That was something Maria could never forgive. On the night of March 6th, when Richard left for another business trip, Maria sat alone at the kitchen table. Her hands held a coffee cup tightly while her thoughts raced. She no longer cried. She had cried enough. Now, her mind was clear. She was focused. She had made a decision. She would gather strong proof, not just to expose Richard, but to make sure he would lose everything he had taken for granted. Her thoughts turned to the upcoming family reunion, the yearly event where all of Richard's relatives gathered. That would be the perfect moment to show everyone the truth. Maria planned everything carefully. She bought hidden cameras from the internet. They were small and looked like normal household items. She had one camera inside a clock on the bedroom dresser. Another camera was hidden inside a photo frame in the living room. She made sure both were placed at perfect angles so they would record everything without anyone noticing. She also placed a small voice recorder in Richard's briefcase. It would turn on when it heard sound and capture every private conversation and phone call. Maria knew Richard's habits well by this point. He had grown careless. He believed her silence meant she had accepted his cheating. He could not have been more wrong. Over the next few weeks, Maria quietly pulled away from him. She stopped trying to talk to him. She spent more time with the children. She let him believe he was free to continue the affair. Her distance made him feel safe, and with time, Richard became more bold. He brought Lisa into their home again and again, thinking no one would ever know. But each time, the cameras recorded everything: the looks, the touches, the words. Maria now had hours of video and sound recordings. They told the story of a man who had not only betrayed his wife but had destroyed the trust that held their family together. She felt sadness, but she also felt peace. She knew what she had to do. This was no longer about anger. It was about protecting her children. She could not let them grow up in a home built on lies. As June arrived, the Jenkins family reunion was being planned. Richard's parents were hosting it at their large house outside of Maryland, just like they did every year. The event was planned for July 4th. It would include food, games, and family traditions. Everyone would be there: Richard's brothers, sisters, their spouses, cousins, nieces, and nephews. For Richard, it was a chance to act like the perfect father and husband. But Maria saw it differently. She saw it as her chance to reveal everything. She acted like nothing was wrong. She helped with the planning. She smiled when needed. But deep inside, she was getting ready for the moment that would change everything. By now, her evidence was complete. She had videos, voice recordings, and even saved messages from Richard's phone. It all proved the affair beyond any doubt. There would be no way for him to escape the truth. She decided the family reunion would be the place where she revealed it all. She had stayed silent long enough. She had suffered enough. She wanted to tell the truth in front of the people who believed Richard was a good man. She wanted them to see who he really was. On the morning of July 4th, the sky was clear and warm. The smell of fresh grass was in the air. Richard's parents' house looked beautiful. The backyard was wide, with big trees offering shade. Picnic tables were set up, and children ran around laughing. Maria arrived with Richard and the children. She kept her face calm, even though her heart was beating fast. She had already prepared a USB drive. It held a short video with clips of everything she had recorded. The day went on as usual. People laughed, shared stories, and the smell of food filled the air. Richard smiled, greeted everyone, and acted like a proud husband and father. He had no idea what was coming. Maria stayed close to their children. She watched everything quietly. Her mind was steady. Her moment was coming. She had to time everything exactly right. As the sun began to set and the family gathered inside for their usual slideshow, Maria knew the moment had come. The living room was full of Richard's relatives, everyone sitting comfortably and ready to watch the yearly collection of family memories. Maria felt her heartbeat speed up, but she stayed calm. She stood quietly in the back while Richard's father set up the projector and connected the laptop to the screen. When the room went dark and everyone focused on the screen, Maria made her move. She walked over to the laptop as if she was just fixing a small problem. She slipped her USB drive into the computer without anyone noticing and quickly found the file she needed. With a steady hand, she pressed play. Maria had planned everything carefully. Now, with all of Richard's family watching, there would be no way for him to escape. The projector clicked on. The quiet sound of the machine filled the room as the screen lit up. Richard's father smiled at Maria, thinking she had made something special for the family, maybe a sweet memory video. But what appeared on the screen was not a happy moment. It was not what anyone expected. The video was not clear, but it was clear enough. Richard was on the screen, and he was not alone. Lisa was there too. Everyone could see who she was. The video showed them together inside Maria and Richard's home, in moments that should have been private. It showed their touches, their closeness, and the quiet words they thought no one would hear. The room went silent. At first, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They were trying to understand what they were seeing. Then gasps filled the air, and whispers began. The image of Richard as a loyal husband and loving father shattered in seconds. The faces of his family changed from warmth to shock. Richard sat frozen in place. His face turned pale. He tried to get up, but his legs felt too weak. He looked at Maria, panic in his eyes. He had never thought she would do something like this. He believed she would always stay silent, that she would protect the image of their family forever. But Maria had found her voice. And nothing could stop her now. Richard jumped from his chair and rushed toward the laptop, desperate to stop the video. But Maria stood in front of him. She blocked his path. Her eyes were steady and cold. She did not need to say anything. Her look said it all. This was only the beginning. The video kept playing. Now the sound recordings began. The room filled with Richard's voice. Everyone heard him sweet-talking Lisa, making promises he never thought anyone else would hear. With every passing second, Richard felt smaller. He had lost control, and Maria had thought of everything. The room's mood changed. Shock turned into disgust. Richard's family, who had once supported him, now stared at him with disbelief. His parents sat still, unable to speak or even look at him. His brothers and sisters exchanged looks, trying to understand who this man really was. Then Richard lost control. He lunged at Maria, his face full of anger. But his older brother James jumped in. He held Richard back, protecting Maria. Even in his anger, Richard could not change what had already happened. Everything was falling apart. Maria stood still. She had expected all of this. She had thought through every reaction. While Richard crumbled, she stayed calm. She had waited for this moment. When the last recording ended and silence returned to the room, Maria opened her bag. With the same steady hands, she pulled out a stack of papers. She had prepared them weeks ago. Without saying a word, she threw the divorce papers at Richard's feet. Her terms were clear. She would take full custody of their children. Richard would lose half of everything they had built together. There would be no talks. No begging. No more chances. The truth had already spoken. In the weeks that followed, Richard's life fell apart. The damage moved quickly. Maria, with all her proof, moved through the legal process without trouble. Richard tried to fight for custody, but his efforts were weak. He had no good answers. The judge saw the hours of video and audio recordings and had no choice. The decision was simple. The judge gave everything to Maria. On August 15, 2012, the court gave Maria full custody of the children. Richard was ordered to give her half of all their shared property. He also had to pay child support every month. The judge warned him clearly that if he missed even one payment, he could go to jail. His life, once respected and secure, had completely fallen apart. As more time passed, Richard's place in the family began to fall apart too. His parents, who once supported him, could no longer look at him the same way. His brothers and sisters kept their distance, embarrassed by the shame he had brought to their family. Richard, a man who once seemed to have everything, was now left alone and without support. For Maria, the journey had been painful, but it also brought her peace. She had spent years trying to be the perfect wife, giving up her own happiness for the sake of their family. Now, she was finally free. Free from the lies. Free from the pain. Free from the heartbreak that had worn her down for so long. She focused all her energy on her children and on building a better future for them. Richard, however, began to fall apart. The affair had taken everything from him, his family, his good name, and his self-respect. Every time he made the child support payment, he was reminded of everything he had lost. His anger grew, and he could not find a way to fix the life he had destroyed. Maria, on the other hand, kept moving forward. Her children and her community gave her strength. While the pain from the past had not disappeared completely, she had taken back control of her life. She no longer had to pretend. She no longer had to be the perfect wife. She was free to be herself. Richard was left behind, forced to live with the outcome of his choices. He would always remember the day his secrets were revealed to everyone. What once looked like a perfect family life had been destroyed by his own actions. The family reunion, once a time for joy, would forever be remembered for betrayal. For Maria, the memories still carried pain. But more importantly, they showed how strong she had become. She had broken free from a cold and empty marriage. And now, she was ready to live a life that was truly her own. Hi guys, today, I'm going to tell you about a very sad and shocking story. On December 20th, 2017, a press conference was held. Mark Perez, a special agent from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, shared big news about a man named Mike Williams. Mike was a real estate appraiser in Tallahassee. People thought he had drowned while duck hunting at Lake Seminole on December 16, 2000, and that alligators had eaten his body. But Mark Perez told everyone, Mike Williams did not drown. He was not eaten by alligators. He didn't run away and leave his wife and baby daughter behind. He was murdered. Perez said they couldn't share all the details yet because of the investigation, but they had informed Mike's family about the new findings. This story is not just about a crime. It is also about love, betrayal, cheating, greed, and a strong mother who never gave up. For more than 17 years, Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams, didn't believe her son had drowned. She kept asking the police to look into the case. She believed with all her heart that someone had done something wrong to her son and that the truth would come out. Cheryl said, "I had two choices, to believe he was alive or dead. I chose to believe he was alive, and that's what kept me going." Many people called her crazy, but if she had stopped trying, no one would have found out the truth. The day before the press conference, Brian Winchester, a close friend of Mike and Mike's wife Denise, was sent to prison for 20 years. Denise later married Brian. Cheryl had been right all along. Justice was finally happening. Back in the year 2000, Brian and Denise were having an affair that started in 1997. That secret relationship led to murder. Years later, they were no longer close and didn't trust each other anymore. Brian became scared that Denise would tell the police what really happened, so he attacked her. Denise fought back and asked the court to give Brian the longest prison sentence possible. Brian then decided to tell the truth. He made a deal with the prosecutor. In 2017, he was given 20 years in prison for kidnapping Denise, but he avoided a life sentence by helping in the murder case. Denise had no idea that Brian had told everything to the police. He admitted that he helped plan the murder and hide the truth for 17 years. In return, he wouldn't be punished for his part in the killing. He also showed the police where Mike's body was and gave a full confession. A few months later, on May 8, 2018, Denise Williams was arrested. At first, this case seems confusing. So let's go back and look at how it all began. Jerry Michael Williams, also called Mike by his friends and family, was born on October 16, 1969, in Bradfordville, near Tallahassee. His father drove a bus, and his mother was a kindergarten teacher. Even though the family didn't have much money and lived in a trailer, they were happy. His parents always cared deeply about their son's future. Instead of building a house, they saved money to make sure both sons could go to college. The boys also worked part-time at night in grocery stores. Mike and his brother went to North Florida Christian High School. Mike did very well there. He became the student council president, played soccer, and joined the Key Club. At 15, Mike started duck hunting for fun. Around the same time, he met Denise Merrill. Mike was a soccer player and student leader, and Denise was a cheerleader and the council secretary. They started dating, and their friends thought they made a perfect couple. While still in high school, Denise introduced Mike to Brian Winchester. The two became close friends. Brian later began dating a girl named Kathy Thomas. The two couples stayed friends for the rest of Mike's life. After high school, Mike went to Florida State University, where he studied political science and urban planning. Mike and Denise both graduated together. Denise became a public accountant, and Mike started working as a real estate appraiser. He worked very hard, sometimes 15 hours a day, and his career quickly took off. In 1994, Mike and Denise got married. Around the same time, Brian also married Kathy. The four of them stayed very close. Mike deeply loved his wife and worked hard to give his family a good life. By the time he was 31, Mike was doing very well in his job, earning close to $200,000 a year. Mike and Denise bought a house in a nice neighborhood on the east side of town. In 1999, they became parents to a baby girl named Ansley. Friends of Mike said he always planned carefully. Since duck hunting was risky, he wanted to make sure his family would be okay if anything ever happened to him. He turned to Brian, who was working as an insurance agent. Brian helped Mike buy 2 life insurance policies, first for $250,000 and later for $500,000. In 2000, Mike's father died suddenly. This deeply affected Mike. He wanted to make sure his own family was protected, so he bought another policy for $1 million with Brian's help. This meant that just 6 months before he disappeared, Mike's life was insured for nearly $2 million. According to Denise, on the morning of December 16, 2000, Mike left early to go duck hunting on Lake Seminole, a large lake connected to the Apalachicola River. That day was their 6th wedding anniversary, and the couple had planned to go out and celebrate later that night in a small nearby town. But Mike never came home. Denise and their daughter waited, and when he did not return by noon, she called her father. He then contacted Brian Winchester. Brian and his father drove to Lake Seminole to look for Mike. There, they found Mike's Ford Bronco parked near the boat ramp, but there was no sign of Mike. They checked all of Mike's favorite hunting spots but found nothing, not even his boat. So, they called the police. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission joined the search. A few hours later, a helicopter spotted a boat floating about 225 feet from the boat ramp. When the team checked the boat, they found Mike's shotgun still inside its case. It looked like he never even used it. The search turned into a rescue mission. Some locals said that before the lake was created, the area had been an orchard. That lake had a lot of tree stumps sticking out of the water, both above and below the surface. Because of this, it was very dangerous to drive a boat there. People thought that maybe Mike's boat hit one of those stumps, and he fell into the water. Since he was wearing heavy boots, they could have filled with water, pulling him under and causing him to drown. More help was brought in, including a dive team from Montgomery, Alabama, and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. They searched the lake carefully, but they found nothing. Mike was still missing. After a week, the rescue mission changed into a body search. Teams were given long poles to check the lake's bottom. Search dogs were brought in too. 10 days into the search, someone found a hunting hat with a camouflage design, but they couldn't say for sure if it was Mike's. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation officers guessed that Mike might have been eaten by alligators. That could explain why they couldn't find his body. There were many alligators living in the lake. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement also found no signs of foul play and agreed with that idea. After 5 weeks, the search ended. The very next day, Denise held a memorial for Mike. Less than 2 months after he went missing, it seemed like Denise had accepted her husband was gone. But Cheryl, Mike's mother, did not believe it. 6 months later, in June 2001, a fisherman found a pair of water boots floating in the lake. Divers searched the area and found a hunting jacket and a flashlight at the bottom of the lake. In one of the jacket's pockets, there was a hunting license with Mike's name on it. But this raised many new questions. The boots and jacket had no bite marks from alligators. They didn't look like they had been underwater for 6 months, the boots weren't slimy, and the flashlight still worked. Still, just a week later, Denise's lawyer went to court and asked that Mike be declared dead based on the items found. He said that maybe alligators or other animals had eaten the body completely. The court agreed. The death certificate said Mike died on December 16, 2000, by accident while duck hunting. The body was still missing. That could have been the end of Mike's story, if not for his mother, Cheryl. She refused to stop searching for her son. "I can't stop looking for him until I find him," she said. Cheryl's fight for the truth made her relationship with Denise fall apart. Denise demanded that she stop and move on. She told Cheryl, "I'm tired of hearing about Mike. If you keep pushing this, you'll never see your granddaughter again." Denise meant it. She kept Cheryl away from her granddaughter. But Cheryl did not stop. If she had, Mike's story might have stayed hidden forever at the bottom of that lake. It took her 3 years to convince police to reopen the case. Cheryl made phone calls, put up missing posters, wrote letters to the governor of Florida, kept records, asked people to share Mike's story on social media, and spoke with news reporters. She even made a full notebook of everything she learned. She later reached out to Matthew Oresco, a wildlife expert who studied alligators. He explained that alligators do not eat during cold winter months. When the water is cold, they just try to stay warm. He also said that when alligators do attack, they always leave behind signs like broken bones, bite marks, or other clues. After learning this, Cheryl kept pushing the truth. Finally, after 3 years, she convinced the police to stop believing the alligator story and open a real investigation into what happened to her son. The case was reopened after new details came to light about how alligators behave. Experts said it was unlikely Mike had been eaten by them, especially in winter. Interviews and small pieces of evidence made investigators believe that Mike's death was not an accident. "I feel strongly that Mike didn't die in Lake Seminole," said Ronnie Austin, a former investigator from the state attorney's office. He also said that all the agencies involved began to think the same way. At first, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Agency handled the case because they believed Mike was just a missing hunter. Officers searched for 735 hours across 10 acres of the lake, but they never looked for signs of a crime. Jackson County Sheriff's deputies also joined the search but didn't explore other possibilities either. Later, police interviewed people involved in the original search. Officer David Arnett, who was there that day, remembered things that seemed odd. For example, Mike usually never hunted alone. His truck was found in a remote area, not near the concrete boat ramp he usually used. He would have had to drag his boat through mud to get to the water, which made no sense. Also, there had been a strong storm that night, and it should have pushed the boat toward the east side of the lake. But the boat was found on the west side. The motor was off, but the gas tank was still full. If Mike had fallen out while driving, the boat would have kept spinning until it ran out of fuel. Sadly, by the time police started suspecting foul play, it was too late. The scene had already been disturbed by volunteers and search teams. A car that might have had clues was taken by the family without being checked. Witnesses were not properly questioned. Denise and Brian Winchester started to look suspicious. Police found out that Brian had sold Mike the life insurance policy. Later, he divorced his wife Kathy and married Denise. Denise also received nearly $2 million from Mike's life insurance. On top of that, she showed no interest in the investigation and tried to stop Cheryl from pushing it forward. She even cut Cheryl off from seeing her granddaughter. In 2005, Denise and Brian were both questioned, but they did not help the investigation. Brian claimed he was at home in bed, 60 miles away, and that his wife Kathy could confirm this. He said he planned to go hunting with his father-in-law but had overslept. Denise's answers also gave no new clues. In 2008, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement finally announced they believed Mike had been murdered. But they still didn't have enough evidence to arrest anyone. They said, "We have suspicions, but we need proof." Still, Cheryl didn't give up. Her efforts led to the Discovery Channel doing a story about Mike's case in 2011. By then, Cheryl had lost faith in the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. She believed they either couldn't or didn't want to solve the case. In 2012, Cheryl started writing letters to the governor of Florida, Rick Scott. She asked him to either give the case to another agency or assign a special prosecutor. Over 9 years, she sent 2,600 letters. That same year, Denise caught Brian cheating. They broke up, and in 2013, she filed for divorce. A few years later, they had to deal with property matters, including the appraisal of their old family home. That moment changed everything. Brian didn't want the divorce. Denise didn't want to stay in the relationship. The tension between them was about to break, and it would lead to the truth coming out. They kept arguing all the time, and the investigation into Mike's disappearance was putting more pressure on them. Brian kept calling Denise, but she stopped answering. He was overwhelmed with stress. On August 5, 2016, the same day a home appraisal was supposed to happen for their divorce case, Denise left for work at Florida State University. While talking to her sister on the phone, she suddenly noticed someone climb over the back seat of her car. It was Brian Winchester. Brian pointed a loaded gun at Denise and told her to keep driving. He said he had to do it because she was ignoring him. Denise stayed calm, agreed with everything he said, and told him she would give their marriage another chance. Brian believed her. She promised not to go to the police. That's when Brian got out of the car. He took with him a brown plastic sheet, cleaning spray, and tools, items that made it clear he had been planning something terrible. Denise had just barely escaped being killed. Right after he left, Denise called 911. Brian was quickly arrested and charged with kidnapping, a serious crime in Florida that can lead to life in prison. He was also charged with domestic violence and armed burglary. The court decided to keep him in jail without bail. Cheryl Williams, Mike's mother, hoped this would finally lead to the truth. She told the New York Daily News, "Brian is not going to let Denise walk away with all that money. I pray he tells us what really happened." And Brian did talk. To avoid life in prison, Brian made a deal with the prosecutor. He started telling everything. "At first, things were going fine, but I wasn't a good husband," Brian admitted. He said that one day, he found a note in his first wife Kathy's purse and realized she was cheating on him. He wanted revenge. Around that time, he and Kathy would often hang out with Mike and Denise. Brian had known Denise since high school. He said he had never been attracted to her before, but after Kathy cheated, he began to look at other women differently. Brian and Denise's affair began in October 1997. What started as one night of drunk sex at a concert quickly turned into regular secret meetings. "We met at hotels during work hours. We met whenever we could," Brian said. Brian didn't want a divorce, and Denise made it clear she wouldn't leave Mike. She cared a lot about her public image and didn't want to risk losing custody of her daughter. Eventually, their affair turned serious. They gave each other gifts, wrote love letters, and saw themselves as a real couple. But they couldn't live like that forever. They felt they had no way out. Divorce wasn't an option for Denise. She didn't want to ruin her perfect image. Then, during a hunting trip, Mike almost had an accident. Brian saved his life. That moment gave Denise an idea, a way to escape the situation. As part of his deal with the court, Brian later revealed that by the year 2000, they had started talking seriously about killing Mike and even Kathy. Denise didn't want to be seen as a killer, so she told Brian she wanted it to look like an accident. That way, she could live with it. They talked about different ways to do it. In the end, they agreed to make it look like Mike had a boating accident. The timing was planned so that they could get the biggest payout for Mike's life insurance. One of the policies was going to expire at the end of December 2000. They knew they had to act fast. The plan was set. Brian called Mike and invited him on a hunting trip. Brian said he told Mike that he had found a perfect hunting spot near the edge of Lake Seminole. Mike thought it was just another trip with his friend and planned to return home by noon to celebrate his wedding anniversary with Denise. "I told him we were going somewhere special and that he needed to bring his wading boots," Brian said. He made sure Mike wore the boots because people believed that if you fell into deep water with those heavy boots, you would drown quickly. The plan was simple, make it look like an accident. But when they got into the water and Brian pushed Mike out of the boat, things didn't go as expected. Mike didn't sink, he grabbed onto nearby tree stumps and began making his way toward the shore. Brian panicked. "I didn't know what to do," he said. Mike started yelling for help. "I was scared. I had a shotgun. I panicked and I shot him in the head. I wasn't thinking. Everything went wrong." He realized he needed to act fast. He was supposed to be home already and getting ready to hunt with his father-in-law. Nobody knew he had gone to the lake with Mike. So Brian drove home, hoping his wife Kathy was still asleep. He entered quietly, saw his phone on the floor, got into bed, and then called his father-in-law to apologize for oversleeping. He did everything he could to make it look like he had never left the house. After that, he hid Mike's body. He later admitted that Denise didn't know Mike had been shot. Brian tried to tell her, but she didn't want to hear it. It was enough for her to believe Mike had drowned. She wanted to think it was God's will and nothing more. They both promised never to tell anyone the truth. They said they killed Mike because they couldn't be together otherwise. The money was just a bonus, Brian said in court. Investigators later learned that Brian had placed a hat, boots, flashlight, and hunting license in the lake himself. First, He did it to keep the search focused on the lake. Later, it gave them a reason to declare Mike dead so that Denise could collect the insurance money. Usually, it takes 5 years to legally declare someone dead without a body. But Denise got it done in just 7 months. With Social Security and life insurance, she received about $2 million. On May 8, 2018, Denise Williams was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and helping cover up a crime. She pleaded not guilty. In February 2019, she was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. 5 months later, her daughter Ansley received all of her father's money and assets that had once gone to Denise. In January 2020, Denise appealed her case. Her lawyer told the court there was no proof that she had helped commit the murder. In November 2020, the court dropped the murder charge but kept her 30-year sentence for conspiracy. Denise is now in the Florida Women's Reception Center. She will be 78 when she's released. Brian Winchester is in Madison Correctional Institution in Florida. He will be released on July 30th, 2036, when he will be 67. Ansley, the daughter of Mike and Denise, believes her mother is innocent. She blames Brian Winchester for everything. Ansley chose not to speak to any media about the case or her personal life. According to Cheryl, Mike's mother, and Nick, Ansley's uncle, they haven't been able to stay in touch with her. Cheryl is heartbroken. Not only did she lose her son, but she also lost her connection with her granddaughter. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe. Many more shocking stories are coming your way. The Carson family lived in a quiet and beautiful neighborhood. The houses had clean lawns, white fences, and everything looked peaceful. Richard Carson was an accountant who many people trusted. His wife, Sophia, was a kind teacher at an elementary school. Together, they looked like they had a perfect life. They had 2 children, Anna and Tyler, who made them very proud. One cold autumn morning, everything changed. Richard came home after a weekend fishing trip with his friends. When he entered the house, it felt strange. There was no noise, no warmth, just silence. He called out for Sophia, but nobody answered. Feeling worried, he went upstairs to their bedroom. What he saw made him freeze. Sophia was lying on the bed without moving. Her skin was pale, and the bed was covered in dried blood. Richard ran to her and tried to wake her up, but it was no use. She had already died. He called 911 right away. Police and emergency workers came quickly. They confirmed that Sophia was dead. The police started checking the house for clues. Richard was in shock and could hardly speak. Detective Sarah McMillan, who was known for solving tough cases, took control of the investigation. She noticed there were no signs that someone had broken into the house. This made her believe that Sophia probably knew the person who did this. The police checked Richard's story about his fishing trip. His friends confirmed that he was with them, far away, when Sophia died. Still, people in the neighborhood could not believe what happened. The Carsons always looked like a happy couple who loved each other and their kids. Soon, people started to whisper about Richard. Some said he might have been cheating on Sophia. Sophia's best friend, Laura, told the police that Sophia had once said she thought Richard was seeing someone else. This made people think maybe the marriage had problems. The news spread fast, and reporters made it sound like a crime of passion. The police felt more pressure to solve the case, but Richard's story was strong, and they had no clear proof against him. That is when Sophia's sister, Megan, decided to get help on her own. She hired a private investigator named Jake Thompson. She wanted him to find out if Richard had really betrayed Sophia and to figure out what really happened. Richard and Sophia had known each other since high school. They had been a couple for a long time and were always close. After school, they went to college together, got married, and started a family. Their life looked perfect. Richard did well in his job, and Sophia loved teaching. People in their neighborhood liked them, and they often joined local events together. But Sophia had been feeling unsure about Richard. She noticed things that made her worried: late nights at work, strange phone calls, and how Richard had become more distant. She told Laura about these things and said she was scared Richard was cheating. Laura told her to ask Richard directly, but Sophia was too afraid. She did not want to believe the man she loved could hurt her like that. As time went on, Sophia's worry grew. She began to check Richard's phone when he was not around and watched his actions closely. Her fears started to affect their marriage. She kept asking Laura if she was just imagining things, but Laura could see that Sophia was not okay. Then one night Sophia saw a lipstick mark on Richard's collar. That was the last thing she could handle. She faced him and asked for the truth. Richard said he had done nothing wrong. He told her it was just a mistake and said he was loyal to her. But Sophia could not believe him. She felt something was not right. They started arguing more often, and the fights became serious. Sophia felt stuck. She could not trust him, and Richard was getting angry at her questions. Sometimes, Sophia thought she was imagining things. She thought about hiring a private investigator but was scared to know the truth. So instead, she kept talking to Laura, who always stood by her side. Laura told her to start writing everything down. Sophia started keeping a journal. She wrote about anything that seemed strange, every fight, and every moment she doubted Richard. She hoped that if one day the truth came out, she would have proof. Sophia's sister Megan also noticed something was wrong. She was close to Sophia and could see that her sister was no longer happy. Megan told her to take action, but Sophia was too scared and unsure. As more time passed, Sophia became more and more obsessed with the idea that Richard had a secret life. That strong feeling made Megan decide to get help. She hired Jake Thompson, a private investigator, to find the truth and help get justice for Sophia. Detective Sarah McMillan and her team worked hard to find out what happened before Sophia died. They spoke with friends, family, and neighbors to learn about her life and if anyone had a reason to hurt her. Richard helped with the investigation, and his alibi seemed very strong, so the police could not accuse him yet. Megan was tired of waiting and needed answers. She talked to Jake Thompson. He had been solving cases for over 20 years and was known for being very good at finding hidden facts. When Megan explained everything Sophia had told her, Jake agreed to investigate. He began by reading Sophia's journal. Her notes showed how scared and unsure she was. Her words showed how much pain and fear she was living with. Jake saw that the marriage was not perfect like it looked from the outside. Jake started by looking into Richard's daily life. He followed him to work and watched how he behaved. On the surface, Richard looked like a good father and a focused worker. But Jake did not trust what he saw. He knew people often hide the truth well. When he talked to Sophia's friends and co-workers, they all said she was kind, loved her family, and was a great teacher. But they also said she had changed in recent years. They noticed she was sad and quiet more often. Laura, Sophia's best friend, was very helpful. She told Jake all about Sophia's fear that Richard was cheating. She also told him about a woman named Carla Mason. Carla used to work with Richard and was once very close to him. Sophia had always been worried about Carla and thought that Richard might have had an affair with her. Jake started looking into Carla Mason. He searched through her past and found many worrying things. Carla had a history of unstable relationships and was known to manipulate people. She had suddenly left the job where she worked with Richard, and no one knew the real reason. Jake had a strong feeling there was more behind her story. As Jake continued his work, he started to connect the dots. Carla being close to Richard, Sophia's growing fears, and Sophia's sudden death all seemed to be related. Jake believed he was close to the truth, but he needed real proof that Carla had something to do with it. Jake began watching Carla more closely. He followed her and noted everything she did. He also spoke to people who knew her, trying to understand her better. What he learned was clear: Carla was jealous and obsessed. She saw Sophia as the person keeping her from being happy with Richard. With all this information coming together, Jake decided to confront Carla. He wanted to get to the truth and help bring justice to Sophia's case. Jake had worked many difficult cases before. He had seen people cheat, lie, and even kill. But this case was different. It was filled with secrets and betrayal that made it more complicated. As Jake went deeper, he learned that Richard Carson was not the perfect husband and father everyone believed he was. Jake found proof that Richard had been cheating on Sophia. His relationship with Carla was not just a short mistake. Carla was a woman in her early 30s. She was attractive and had a strong personality that made people notice her. She and Richard started off with small talks and shared lunches at work, but things quickly became serious. They began meeting in secret and grew very close. Jake followed them and took photos that showed their private meetings. It was clear they were more than just co-workers. But it was Carla's actions that worried Jake the most. She acted like she owned Richard. She wanted to take Sophia's place and be part of his life forever. Jake also learned more about Carla's past. She had a difficult childhood. Her mother was cold and distant, and she had been in several harmful relationships. These things left her emotionally damaged. When she met Richard, she saw him as someone who could save her. She believed he could give her the life she had always wanted. But Carla became dangerous when she realized Richard would not leave his wife. Even though he made promises to her, Richard stayed with Sophia. This made Carla angry and more jealous. She began to see Sophia as the only thing stopping her from being happy. Jake made a huge discovery when he found emails between Carla and Richard. In these emails, Carla told Richard how upset and angry she was. She accused him of lying to her and told him to leave Sophia. Richard replied with soft words, but he never promised to take any real steps. One email was very important. Carla sent it 1 week before Sophia died. It was long and emotional. In it, she said she would tell everyone about the affair if Richard did not take action. She even suggested a plan to get rid of Sophia. Her words hinted at something terrible about to happen. With this email and everything else Jake had found, he was ready to take the next step. Jake worked harder to prove Carla was involved in the crime. He talked to her old friends and co-workers. Many of them said Carla acted in strange and dangerous ways. They described her as someone who would do anything to get what she wanted. She often lied and played with people's feelings to get her way. One co-worker shared something important. He remembered Carla once talking about wanting a life with Richard. She even spoke, without any emotion, about how things would be better if Sophia was gone. At the time, it sounded like a joke. But now, those words felt dark and serious. Jake believed he was very close to solving the case. He collected all the proof and got ready to face Carla. He hoped she would admit the truth when she realized there was no way out. Carla's relationship with Richard started as small flirting. But for Carla, it quickly became something deeper. She saw Richard as someone who could save her from feeling alone and sad. Over time, her love turned into jealousy and a strong wish to take Sophia's place. Their affair started 3 years ago at an office party. Richard noticed Carla sitting alone and started a conversation. They both talked about how unhappy they were at home and how much they cared about their work. That night was the beginning of their secret relationship. Soon, they were meeting for lunch, then for dinner, and finally spending nights together at hotels. Richard did everything to keep their meetings a secret, but Carla's feelings kept growing stronger. She dreamed about a life where they could be together in public, without Sophia in the way. But every time Richard went home to his wife, Carla got more upset. She started seeing Sophia as the person standing between her and happiness. Carla's behavior became more extreme. She would call Richard all the time, ask where he was, and even show up at his office without warning. Richard first liked the attention, but then he started feeling stuck. Things got worse when Carla found out that Richard had lied about spending a weekend with Sophia. She got angry and told him he had to choose, her or his wife. Richard tried to calm her down and promised he would leave Sophia, but deep down, he knew he would not do it. Carla's feelings turned darker. She began watching Sophia closely. She followed her, learned her schedule, and often parked outside the Carson house at night. She sat there in her car, watching Sophia live the life Carla wanted so badly. That made her even angrier. Over time, Carla started thinking about getting rid of Sophia. These thoughts became serious. She began planning how to do it without getting caught. The email she sent Richard, threatening to tell everyone about the affair, was her last try to make him choose her. But when he did nothing, she decided to act alone. On the night of the murder, Carla waited until Richard was away on his fishing trip. She had carefully planned everything. She turned off the security cameras and made sure she would not leave any sign that she had been there. She used a spare key Richard had once given her to get inside. The house was quiet. Carla moved through the rooms without making a sound. She found Sophia asleep in bed. Seeing her lying there so peaceful made Carla furious. She walked toward the bed with a knife in her hand. Sophia opened her eyes just as Carla attacked, but it was already too late. The attack was quick and violent, full of anger and jealousy that had been growing for years. When it was over, Carla stood over Sophia's body. At first, she felt like she had won, but soon that feeling turned into fear and shock. She realized what she had done. She quickly cleaned everything she had touched, making sure not to leave any clues behind. Then she left the house quietly and disappeared into the dark. Carla believed no one would ever find out. She thought she had done everything perfectly. But Jake Thompson had slowly broken down her lies. His careful watching and many interviews showed just how far Carla had gone in her obsession with Richard. The proof Jake collected showed a woman who was willing to do anything, even kill, to get what she wanted. Jake knew that Carla's guilty mind and all the strong evidence would eventually make her give up. It was just a matter of time before she could not take the pressure and told the truth about what she had done. Jake made sure to collect every piece of proof needed to win the case in court. He knew the case had to be perfect. He put together all the photos and videos he had taken of Richard and Carla. These pictures showed their secret relationship and proved that the affair was still going on. It helped show Carla's reason for hurting Sophia. Then, Jake turned to the emails. These messages were full of threats from Carla. She had told Richard to leave Sophia or suffer the results. Jake printed them and underlined the parts where she hinted at doing something serious if he did not choose her. He also spoke to Carla's old co-workers and friends. One friend, although scared, shared something Carla said a few days before the murder. Carla had talked about wanting Sophia gone and even said it would not be hard to make that happen. This showed that Carla had planned everything in advance. But the strongest proof came from inside the house. Jake worked closely with Detective Sarah McMillan. Together, they checked the knife used in the murder. Forensic experts found Carla's DNA on it, and also on the bedroom door handle. Even though Carla had tried to clean everything, she missed a few spots. They also found a fingerprint on the window she used to get inside. It was not a full match, but it helped show she was there. Jake also spoke to people who lived nearby. One neighbor said they saw Carla's car near the Carson house more than once. This matched her stalking behavior and made the case stronger. Finally, something unexpected happened. Richard, feeling guilty and realizing how dangerous Carla really was, decided to help the police. He gave them more emails and messages from Carla and told them everything about their relationship. His story helped confirm when things happened and why Carla did what she did. Jake gave everything to Detective McMillan. She was impressed by how complete the case was. Together, they made a full report explaining Carla's actions, her reasons, and all the evidence. Soon, Carla was arrested at her apartment. She looked shocked. She had truly believed she would never be caught. As the police took her away in handcuffs, Jake finally felt peace. He had uncovered the truth and made sure Sophia got justice. The trial happened quickly. Carla's lawyers tried to say she was being blamed unfairly. But the evidence was too strong to deny. The emails, the forensic proof, and the witness statements clearly showed that Carla was filled with jealousy and willing to kill to get what she wanted. In the end, the court found Carla guilty of first-degree murder. She was given a life sentence with no chance of release. Richard was not charged with any crime, but his actions left a deep mark. His family was broken, and his reputation was damaged forever. The Carson children, Anna and Tyler, were left without their mother. They also had to live with the fact that their father's choices had helped cause the loss of their mother. After the trial, life was no longer the same for those left behind. The future of the Carson family, once full of hope, was now filled with sadness and pain. Sophia's absence was felt every day. Her place in their lives could never be replaced. Sophia's sister, Megan, became the children's guardian. She moved into the Carson home to care for them and give them love and safety. Over time, she built a strong bond with Anna and Tyler. Together, they shared their grief and kept Sophia's memory alive. Her love gave them strength. Laura, who had been Sophia's best friend, also helped the family heal. She arranged memorial events to honor Sophia's life and all the good she had done. People from the neighborhood came together to support the Carson children, reminding them they were not alone. Richard, filled with guilt, began therapy. He wanted to face what he had done and the pain it had caused. He knew he could never take back his mistakes, but he hoped to find some peace and change for the better. His journey became one of learning and taking full responsibility for the past. As the years went on, Anna and Tyler grew up. They carried their mother's lessons with them and were guided by the love of their Aunt Megan. They chased their dreams with strength, always remembering Sophia through the good things they did. The pain never fully left, but they found ways to move forward. The Carson case, filled with heartbreak and truth, became a symbol of strength in the community. It reminded everyone how quickly life can change and how important it is to support one another through the darkest times. John Miller looked at his watch. It was exactly 8 in the evening. This was the time he always poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat in the chair near the fireplace. He had followed this habit for 10 years. 10 years of peace. 10 years without fear. 10 years since he had buried his wife, Anna, in an empty field outside the city. His house in suburban Portland looked rich but felt empty. After Anna disappeared, he sold their apartment and bought this new house. He wanted a fresh start. No memories. No guilt. No reminders of the night she told him she wanted a divorce and how his hands had wrapped around her neck. The police closed the case after a year. There was no proof. Detective Tom Brown still looked at him with anger when they crossed paths, but he had no evidence. Anna's body was never found. John took a sip of whiskey and closed his eyes. His business was doing well. His investment company was growing. People respected him. He gave to charities. He was seen as a good man. No one knew what had happened in his marriage. No one knew the truth about Anna's death. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was unexpected. He was not waiting for anyone. If someone he knew were coming, they would have told him. He thought it might be a delivery. He placed the glass on the table and went to the door. He opened it without checking. And time stopped. Anna was standing there. His wife. Anna. The woman he had killed 10 years ago. John felt the blood leave his face. His legs became weak. His head felt full of noise. "Hi, John," she said. It was her voice. The same voice that haunted his dreams. "Why did you take so long to answer?" She stood in front of him just like she did the day she died. Her hair was still shoulder-length and brown. Her green eyes looked the same. The small mole near her lips was still there. But now she had more wrinkles, and her hair had some gray. It looked like she had lived these 10 years somewhere. But that was not possible. "You?" John could not speak clearly. "Can I come in?" Anna asked with a smile. "It is cold outside." She walked past him and entered the house like she had done it many times before. She took off her coat and hung it on the rack, the same kind they had in their old apartment. "You changed the furniture," she said, looking around. "I like it. I would move the couch to the other wall, though." John leaned against the wall. He could not move. This could not be real. Maybe it was a dream. Or maybe he had lost his mind. "You cannot be here," he finally said. Anna looked confused. "Why not?" "I told you I would come back tonight. I am sorry I am late." There was traffic. John felt dizzy. He held onto the door frame. You are dead. 10 years ago." Anna laughed. Her laugh sounded exactly as he remembered. "John, what are you saying?" "I went to the doctor today. You drove me there, remember?" She stepped closer to him. "Are you feeling sick? You look pale." She smelled like her old perfume. The same one she always wore. "Dior." "You cannot be here," John said again. "I buried you." Anna frowned. She touched his forehead. You feel warm. Maybe you have a fever. Let me make you some tea. She turned and walked to the kitchen. She moved like she knew the place well. John followed her, heart racing. He told himself it was just a dream. He would wake up soon. But he did not wake up. Anna opened the cupboard and took out cups from the right spot. She turned on the kettle and looked at him. You are acting strange today. Did something go wrong at work? John stared at her. He could not believe what he was seeing. He remembered the night clearly. She had said she was leaving him. They argued. He put his hands on her neck. He saw the life leave her eyes. He wrapped her in a rug, drove far away, and buried her. You cannot be here, he said again. He felt sick. Anna came close and held his hand. Her skin was warm. She was alive. John, you are scaring me. Should I call a doctor? He pulled his hand away and stepped back. Who are you? He asked. Panic filled his chest. You are not Anna. Anna is dead. The woman sighed and shook her head. John, stop this. It is not funny. I am tired. I had a doctor's appointment today, and now you are playing games. The kettle whistled. She turned to make the tea. John watched her closely. She moved like Anna. She held the cup with the same hand. She added 2 spoons of sugar and stirred in the same direction. Let us sit, she said. You are not yourself. She gave him the cup. The hot cup burned his fingers. It proved he was not dreaming. Everything was real. How is this possible? He whispered. What is wrong? She asked, sitting down. John, you are scaring me. What happened? He placed the cup on the table. He did not drink it. It has been 10 years, he said. It is the year 2025. Now she looked surprised. But only for a moment. She smiled, but there was worry in her eyes. John, it is the year 2015. Today is March 28th. I went to Dr. Harrison this morning for a checkup. Do you not remember? John shook his head, trying to think clearly. No, that is not possible. It has been 10 years. You are not alive. You died. Why do you keep saying that? She asked, sounding upset. I am alive. I am standing here. John stared at her, trying to understand. Maybe he had lost his mind. Maybe everything in the past 10 years had been a lie. Or maybe he had buried the wrong woman. But that could not be true. He remembered her face the night she died. I can prove it, he said suddenly, standing up fast. I will show you. He ran to his office, returned with his laptop, turned it on, and showed her the date. Look. It says March 28th, 2025. 10 years have passed, Anna. She looked at the screen and then at him with a soft expression. John, I do not know what you did to the computer, but is this a joke? Or are you sick? He shut the laptop and shook his head. It is not a joke. I am not sick. You cannot be here. You died 10 years ago. He hesitated. He had almost said too much. I am what, John? She asked, tilting her head. What did you do? He stepped back. The room seemed to spin. Nothing, he said. I do not know what is happening. She walked toward him and gently placed her hands on his shoulders. John, you need to rest. Come with me. I will take you to bed. She held his hand and led him upstairs. He followed her in silence, like someone in a dream. She moved like she knew the house well, even though he bought it a year after she died. When they entered the bedroom, she turned on the light and began to arrange the bed. He stood at the door and watched her. How did you know this was the bedroom? He asked. She turned and smiled. Why are you asking such a silly question? We have lived here for 5 years. John felt fear growing inside him. No, he said. I bought this house after you disappeared. You were never here. Anna sighed and sat on the edge of the bed. John, you are scaring me. Maybe I should call the doctor. He shook his head. He could not say anything more. What was happening? Was he losing his mind? Was someone playing a very cruel trick on him? But who would know the truth? Who could have known what he did? Lie down, she said gently. You need sleep. Everything will feel better after rest. He walked slowly toward the bed and sat down beside her. She smelled just like she always did. She felt real. Oh, Anna, he whispered. If you were really here, please forgive me. She smiled and touched his face. Forgive you for what, silly? It is all fine now. Lie down. She stood up and gave him space. John lay down without removing his clothes. He was sure he would not sleep. But the shock and confusion wore him out, and he fell into a troubled sleep. When he woke up the next morning, the space beside him in bed was empty. He sat up quickly and looked around. Was it all just a dream? Maybe none of it was real. Then he heard sounds coming from the kitchen, plates, footsteps. He got out of bed and slowly walked downstairs. Anna was standing at the stove, making breakfast. She turned when he entered. Good morning, she said with a smile. How are you feeling? John looked at her and, for the first time in 10 years, felt true fear. By the third day, her presence in the house no longer felt like a strange dream. It had become a real nightmare. Every morning, he hoped it was over. But every morning, she was there, cooking, smiling, asking him how his day would be, as if those 10 years had never passed. As if he had never taken her life on that cold March night. He sat at the table and watched her wash the dishes, just like she used to. First the glasses, then the plates, then the forks and spoons. She wiped her hands on the towel hanging over her shoulder, exactly the way she always did. You are staring at me again, she said without looking back. Is something wrong? John flinched. Even that, the way she sensed his eyes on her, it was exactly like Anna. Everything is fine, he replied. She turned and smiled, but her eyes stayed serious. John, you have been acting strange since the other night. Do you not think you should see a doctor? No, he said quickly. There is no need for that. If he saw a doctor, he would have to explain why he believed his wife was dead, even though she was alive in front of him. That would either send him to a mental hospital or to prison. All right, she said with a shrug. If you say so. But I am worried about you. John felt something press against his chest. Her concern felt real. Just like the real Anna. Even in the final months of their marriage, when everything was falling apart, when he had started yelling and even hitting her, she still looked at him with worry in her eyes. She had always worried about him. It made him angry back then, and it made him just as angry now. His thoughts were broken by a phone call. He took out his phone and saw his business partner Mike calling. I need to answer this, John said, standing up. Sure, Anna replied. I will go upstairs and organize my things. John walked into the living room and answered. Hey, Mike. John, where are you? We agreed to meet at 10. It is almost 11 now. John checked his watch. He had completely forgotten. Sorry. Something came up at home. A family emergency. Mike laughed. Family? Since when do you have a family? I just meant some house stuff. I will be there soon. All right. The client agreed to wait another 30 minutes. Try to make it. The call ended. John turned toward the stairs. Anna, he called. I have to leave. I forgot I had a meeting. There was no reply. He quickly went up the stairs and looked into the bedroom. Empty. The bathroom was also empty. He checked every room upstairs. No sign of her. Anna, he called again, now heading downstairs. Nothing. He searched the whole first floor and even checked the basement. She was gone. Cold sweat formed on his back. Where had she gone? Was she ever really there? Could his mind have made it all up? He ran outside, checked the yard, looked in the garage, nothing. Then he remembered something. He took out his phone and opened the photo gallery. He had taken pictures of her over the last 3 days, early morning in the garden, while she cooked, reading in the living room. But when he opened the photos, he froze. In every picture where Anna should have been, there was only a blurred spot. A blank area. It looked like someone had removed her from each photo on purpose. "This cannot be real," he whispered. His hands were shaking as he flipped through the images. Suddenly, his phone rang again. It was Mike. John took a deep breath and answered. "Yes, Mike, I am heading out now. Make it quick. And do not forget the Greenwood Project files. You picked them up yesterday." "Yes," John said. "I will bring them. I will be there in 20 minutes. He went back into the house, grabbed the file from his office, and walked out the door. Maybe it was good that Anna had disappeared. He needed time to think. He had to figure out what was happening. The rest of the day passed in a daze. He did his work, answered questions, signed papers. But his thoughts stayed on Anna. The strange breakfast conversation. Her sudden vanishing. The photos. When he finally came home that evening, the house was quiet. There was no sign that Anna had ever been there. John let out a long breath. Maybe it was really over. Maybe it had all been in his head. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat by the fireplace. The familiar routine helped him relax. He took a sip and closed his eyes. "Rough day?" John jumped, spilling his drink. Anna was standing in the doorway, smiling. "Where have you been?" he asked, trying to sound calm. "Here at home, of course," she said. "I was sorting my things and cleaning up. Did you not notice the bathroom was cleaner?" John shook his head. "I called for you before I left. You did not answer." Anna frowned. "Maybe you did not check well enough. I was in the dressing room, going through my winter clothes." She walked closer. "John, what is going on with you? You are not acting like yourself." He put down the glass and took out his phone. "I want to show you something." He opened his photo gallery and held the phone out to her. "These are pictures from the last few days. You should be in them. But you are not. How do you explain that?" Anna took the phone and looked at the photos one by one. "John, I do not know what you are talking about. I can see myself in all of them." She handed the phone back to him. And now, to his surprise, she was clearly visible in every picture. She was in the photos exactly where he had taken them. No blur. No empty spots. "This is not possible," he whispered. "I remember clearly, there were only blurs." Anna gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "John, please talk to me. You are scaring me. What is going on?" He looked at her. She was so real, so alive. Then, without thinking, he pulled her into a hug, holding her so tight it almost hurt. She was warm. She was alive. "I am sorry," he said, letting go. "I do not know what happened to me." Anna looked at him with concern. "It is all right. Just tell me if something is wrong." She kissed his cheek and walked into the kitchen. John stayed seated, still feeling the warmth of her skin. Could this really be the real Anna? Had he made a mistake that night? No. He remembered too clearly, her body with no breath, her eyes with no light. He remembered digging her grave, remembered the cold earth, the weight of her body as he placed her inside. He shook his head and tried to forget. Then, he followed her into the kitchen. They ate in silence. John kept watching her, trying to catch something, anything, that would prove she was not real. But she acted just like Anna. Even the way she held her fork. Even the way she pushed her hair behind her ear. After dinner, they sat together to watch a movie. She had picked the same one they had watched the week before she vanished. A chill ran through John. How did she know? He tried to sound casual. "Why that movie?" he asked. Anna looked at the screen. "Was that not the last one we watched together?" she said. "I do not think we finished it." John nodded. They had not finished it. That night, they had started to argue. That night, she had told him she was leaving. That night, he had killed her. During the movie, the doorbell rang. John jumped. "Are you expecting anyone?" he asked. "No," Anna replied. "Are you?" John got up and went to the door. Detective Tom Brown stood there, his face showing the same dislike John remembered from years ago. "Good evening, Mr. Miller," the detective said. "May I come in?" "What brings you here, detective?" John asked, staying still. "Routine visit. We check in on people connected to open cases from time to time." John knew that was not true. Brown had never done a routine visit in 10 years. Still, John stepped aside. "Please come in." "But I am not alone," he said. Brown walked in and looked around. "Yes, I see. You have company." John turned back toward the living room. The movie was still playing. But Anna was gone. "She was just here," he said. Panic crept into his voice. "Maybe she did not want to meet the police," Brown said, raising his eyebrows. "Some people get nervous around us, especially when they have something to hide." John moved toward the stairs. "Anna," he called. Brown's face changed. "Did you say Anna?" John stopped, realizing his mistake. "Yes, that is the name of a friend," he said quickly. "Interesting," Brown said, watching him closely. "Given the situation." A cold sweat covered John's back. "What can I help you with, detective?" "It has been a long day. I would like to get some rest." Brown nodded but did not seem ready to leave. "Have you noticed anything strange lately, Mr. Miller? Any odd phone calls? Letters? Strange visitors?" John tried to act surprised. "No, nothing like that." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. Sometimes old cases open up again when something new appears." Brown paused. "You do remember your wife's case is still open, do you not?" "Yes, of course I remember," John said, trying to keep calm. "But what could change now, after 10 years? Brown shrugged. "Things happen. People start talking. New witnesses show up. New clues come to light." He stared at John. "Bodies are being found." John's heart stopped for a moment. "What do you mean? Did you find Anna?" Brown shook his head. "Not yet. But we will not stop looking. And I believe that one day, the truth will come out." He headed for the door. "I will see you around, Mr. Miller." "Say hello to your friend Anna," the detective said. As the door closed, John leaned against the wall. His legs felt weak. He shut his eyes and tried to steady his breath. "Is he gone?" John opened his eyes with a jolt. Anna stood on the staircase, looking down at him. "Where were you?" he asked. "Upstairs," she replied. "I heard the bell and thought it was better not to come out. I did not want to draw attention." "Why?" Anna slowly came down and stopped in front of him. "Because I can feel something is wrong. You are acting strange. You keep saying I am dead. And now the police." She looked straight into his eyes. "What is going on?" John looked away. "Nothing. It was just a routine check." That is what he said. "Are you sure?" Her voice was full of worry. "It felt like he was here looking for me." John had no words. He could not understand any of this. If this was really Anna, how could she have survived? And if she was not Anna, who was she, and why would she pretend to be his dead wife? "I am tired," he finally said. "Let us go to bed." Anna nodded, but her eyes showed she was still worried. That night, John could not sleep. He lay next to Anna, listening to her slow, calm breathing. He tried to understand what was real and what might be his imagination. He was certain he had killed her, yet she was lying there now, alive and warm. Trying not to wake her, he got out of bed and went down to his study. He turned on the computer and opened a hidden folder he had not touched in years. Inside were old pictures of Anna, pictures from before she vanished. He compared them to the woman now in his house. The same eyes. The same face. Even the same mole on her neck. A perfect match. Could he have been wrong all this time? Could it have been some nightmare caused by guilt? Maybe Anna had just left for a while and now returned. But no! He remembered it all too clearly. He had buried her body. That memory was not some fantasy. John sighed and closed the folder. Then he picked up his phone and opened the gallery. The recent photos of Anna were all there, sharp and clear. But he remembered seeing only blurred images that morning. He needed to test something. He took a photo of his computer screen while the old picture of Anna was displayed. Then he emailed the photo to himself and deleted it from the phone. "I will check it in the morning," he told himself. "If the photo stays normal, maybe I am imagining things." The next morning, when he woke up, Anna was already in the kitchen making breakfast. She smiled at him as he walked in. "You look better," she said. "Sleep must have helped." John nodded without speaking. He sat at the table and picked up his phone. He opened his email. The message was there. He clicked on the attached image. But instead of a picture of his computer screen with Anna's face, he saw only a blurry shape. His face turned pale. He remembered exactly what he had taken a photo of. How could it have changed? "Is something wrong?" Anna asked, placing a plate in front of him. "No," he said, sliding the phone away. "Everything is fine." She sat across from him and looked him in the eyes. "John, I think we need to talk. About yesterday. About the detective. And about what you told him." John's throat went dry. "What do you mean?" "You called me your girlfriend. Not your wife." "Why?" He hesitated. He could not tell her the truth. That, officially, his wife had been missing for 10 years. That she was presumed dead. "I just did not want to get you in trouble," he said. "What kind of trouble, John?" she asked, her voice tense. "Why are the police interested in me?" John pushed his plate aside. He had lost his appetite. "It is hard to explain." "Then try," she said, not taking her eyes off him. At that moment, the doorbell rang. John let out a breath. He was saved, for now. "I will get it," he said, standing up. At the door was a courier. "Delivery for John Miller," the young man said, handing him a small box and a clipboard. John signed for it. He did not remember ordering anything, but the distraction was welcome. He returned to the kitchen. But Anna was gone. "Anna," he called.